Garabagh. Garabagh is an integral part of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has been recognized within its established borders. The territorial integrity of Azerbaijan is inviolable. In addition, the existence of one more Armenian state is possible. The ideas put forward by Armenia expressed ostensibly the population of Garabagh wants self-determination, whereas Armenians have already determined their destiny. They have an independent state, the Republic of Armenia. A second Armenian state cannot exist in the world, so the independence of Garabagh is inadmissible. Garabagh, the historical land of Azerbaijan, and it may have a higher degree of autonomy only. Ilham Aliyev, President of the Azerbaijani Republic. Preface. Mrs. Mehriban Aliyeva, UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador. Preface. In the current period, humanity has faced a new, more painful evil along with the traditional problems. This evil is named terrorism. Today, terrorism has become the most difficult problem facing the entire world. The appalling acts of terror of recent years show that this disaster is of the same degree of dangerousness for all countries and peoples, even for the major powers. Azerbaijan has a straightforward and resolute attitude towards this evil. We're against any kind of violent acts, terror, genocide, separatist extremism, ethnic conflicts, and unfair bloodshed. The Azerbaijani Republic is one of the first countries to join the anti-terrorist alliance. Our people are well aware of the heartbreaking tragedies caused by terror, genocide, and separatist extremism. The Azerbaijani people are one of the peoples having most suffered terror, genocide, and forced deportations. Our people have been living a history full of tragedies for 200 years. This bloody history began at the beginning of the 19th century with a massive replacement by Tsarist Russia of Armenians from Iran and Turkey to our lands. Our people who created an ancient and rich culture for centuries due to mutual impact of different civilizations, nations, languages, and religions, at the juncture of North and South, East and West, adhere to the traditions of its specific tolerance, forbearance, humanism, and mercy in regard to other peoples and cultures, and provided a place for the immigrant Armenians also. Every condition is created for the socio-economic and cultural progress of the Armenians in our country. However, soon the Armenian chauvinist terrorist circles poisoned with the illusion of Great Armenia wanted to create their own state in the Azerbaijani land where they had moved and lived, relying it on their foreign supporters. Firstly, the Armenian district was created for the removed Armenians in Azerbaijan territories. This was followed by clearance of the West Azerbaijani lands from the local residents of these lands, Azerbaijanis, by the armed Armenian terrorist bandit groups provided with all kinds of support from abroad. In 1905, a horrible genocide was committed against the Azerbaijani people. During the First World War, 1914-1918, the Armenian Dashnak armed groups, receiving assistance from bigger states, again implemented terrible genocide against the local Turkish Muslim population throughout Azerbaijan in accordance with a plan prepared in advance. Hundreds of thousands of Azerbaijanis, including the children, women, and the old, were killed. Our numerous settlements and historical monuments were razed to the ground. Our compatriots, having survived the genocide, scattered about the entire world. Despite of all this, our merciful people made a new compromise. In order to achieve peace in the southern Caucasus and put an end to the bloody massacres committed by the Armenian national terrorist groups, the Azerbaijan People's Republic in 29 May 1918 conceded the city of Yerevan, which had been the capital of a former Azerbaijan state, the Yerevan Khanate. Thus, in 1918, the Republic of Armenia was created in Azerbaijan land in the territory of the former Yerevan Khanate. This meant actually the creation of Armenian state in the Azerbaijan land, which contained the territory of Yerevan city and its suburbs. Yet, the Armenian Shonist extreme circles were not satisfied with this either. They made use of their supporters in the Soviet Bolshevik regime and realized our Afghan people a terrible genocide and deportations against the entire Azerbaijani population of the West Azerbaijan. In 1988, the ethnic clearance in West Azerbaijan was complete. Today, Azerbaijanis do not live in the West Azerbaijan. Presently, the Republic of Armenia, that was once populated mostly by Azerbaijanis and belonged to Azerbaijanis historically. In the modern circumstances, when our world moves toward mutual understanding, friendship, global stability, and tranquility in relation to globalization and integration, Armenia and the Armenian separatist terrorist circles separated by it have created a new center of tension in the South Caucasus. Armenia made use of the circumstances that emerged in the period when the Soviet Union collapsed and began an undeclared war against Azerbaijan. Armenian armed forces attacking our lands occupied more than 20% of the Azerbaijani territory, including Garabagh and the adjacent regions. Over 1 million Azerbaijanis become displaced from their own places in their own motherlands, thus becoming internally displaced persons and refugees. Armenia created a separatist terrorist regime in the occupied Azerbaijan land, named as the Garabagh Republic, which is now recognized in the world. The territory of this uncontrolled terrorist regime has presently turned into an international den of criminality, where narcotics are cultivated and transited to Europe. Money laundering and other illicit operations are realized. Notwithstanding the international law on inviolability of territorial integrity of the world community countries, the relevant United Nations organizations resolutions concerning this conflict, European Council parliamentary assemblies, as well as other international organizations' resolutions, Armenia does not withdraw its military forces from the occupied Azerbaijani territories. On the contrary, it spreads false information about the occupied territories, saying ostensibly they are its historical lands. It does not even refrain from putting new territorial claims against Azerbaijan. I think that this book introduced to the readers will create a real picture about both the historical roots of this problem and the real history of Garabagh, and everybody who wants to become acquainted with Armenia-Azerbaijan, the Garabagh conflict. The book titled Garabagh, which covers the brief history of Azerbaijan from ancient times up to the present, as a real history based on irrefutable archive documents and other original sources. This history is not a history of inventions, but of the truths. The archive documents, maps, and photo materials added to the book increase the book's value even more. Based on real facts, the book Garabagh draws attention to how big a tragedy terror is for humanity in the current world and calls all the people to unite and fight actively against this common evil. I believe that this book is written with good intentions and will increase the reader's hate to terror, genocide, separatist extremes, and general acts of all kinds of violence and savagery, as well as to those who commit these evils. This book will strengthen in people the hope of victory of humanism, charity, and friendship ideals over evil. Mrs. Mehriban Aliyeva, UNESCO, God will ambassador. Replacement of Armenians from Iran to the North Azerbaijan territories. Nakhchivan, Yerevan, Garabagh, pictured by the Russian painter Mashkov, 1828. The monument laid by Armenians on the occasion of the 150th anniversary of the replacement from Iran to North Azerbaijan. Aghdara, Mardakert, 1978. View of that monument after the part of it showing the date of replacement 150 years was pulled down by the Armenian separatists. Aghdara, Mardakert, 1988. Distinguished poets, writers, and literary critics from Garabagh. Mullah Panakhva gives 1717-1797. Khurshid Bani Natavan, 1832-1897. Mirmushin Navub, 1833-1914. Qasim Bey Zakir, 1784-1857. Abdurrahim Behakberdiev, 1870-1933. Firudun Bey Köçerli, 1863-1920. Hamida Khanım Javanshir, 1873-1955. Necaf Bey Vezirov, 1854-1926. Yusuf Vezir Çamenzeminli, 1887-1943. Süleyman Rahimov, 1900-1983. Ali Valiyev, 1901-1983. İlyas Efendiyev, 1914-1996. The world-famous composers and singers from Garabagh. Üzeyir Bəcubəyli, 1885-1948. Zülfüqar Bəhicəbəyli, 1884-1950. Fikret Əmirov, 1922-1984. Sultan Nəcubəyli, 1990-1974. Niyazi, 1912-1984. Süleyman Ələsgərov, 1924-2000. Bülbül, 1897-1961. Rashid Behbudov, 1915-1989. Arif Babayev, 1938. Sadiq Can, 1846-1901. Khan Shushinsky, 1901-1979. Seyit Shushinsky, 1889-1965. State, military, and social political figures from Garabagh. Lieutenant General Ferej Bey Aghayev, 1811-1891. Defense Minister of the Azerbaijan People's Republic Samet Bey MAHMUDOV, 1856-1931. One of the Azerbaijan national struggle ideologists, Ahmed Bey Aghayev, 1869-1939. Garabagh General Governor Khosrow Bey Sultanov, 1879-1941. Major General Yagub Guliyev, 1900-1942. Hero of the Soviet Union Aslan Vezirov, 1910-1988. Hero of the Soviet Union Khalil Mehmedov, 1916-1989. Famous oilman, hero of the Socialist Labor Süleyman Vezirov, 1920-1973. Major General Murtuz Guliyev, 1920-1979. Garabagh, etymology, territory, and frontiers. Garabagh, etymology, territory, and frontiers. Garabagh is one of the ancient historic provinces of Azerbaijan. Being an integral part of Azerbaijan, the name Garabagh is derived from the combination of two words in the Azerbaijani language, Gara, big, and Bagh, garden. The combination of words big and garden had the deepest historical background as it goes with the Azerbaijani people itself. It's incontestable that such a combination of words is linked to the description of the country of Azerbaijan in every corner of the world. Having named Garabagh as a part of its native land by the Azerbaijani people, this name has been used as a historical and geographical term beginning with initial sources 1,300 years ago, from the 7th century. Previously, Garabagh dominated a specific place. Subsequently, it encompassed the vast geographical territory in Azerbaijan. This case is specific to Azerbaijan, seat of Nakhchivan, region of Nakhchivan, seat of Shaki, region of Shaki, seat of Ganja, region of Ganja, seat of Lankaran, region of Lankaran, etc. The historical formation of the word Garabagh as the name of a specific Azerbaijani province or region enables to substantiate scientifically its etymology. There is a reason for such a deduction because the word Gara in the Azerbaijani language, as in other Turkic languages also, means not only color but also other meanings such as dense, thick, big, dark, etc. In this regard, the name of Garabagh enjoys the following meanings: black garden, big garden, dense garden, glen garden, or scenic garden. So the word Garabagh belongs to the Azerbaijani people as it goes with Garabagh itself. As we are trying to describe Garabagh, such a question arises from the above. Where is Garabagh located and which Azerbaijani territories does it cover? An answer to this question is very topical for the time being and has central importance to understanding the Daghly-Qarabakh problem. First, we have to address the very first sources in order to get an answer. While describing this issue in this History of Garabagh 1847, Mirza Jamal Javanshir, Vizier of the Garabagh Khanate, a part of the Azerbaijani state, has written the following. As it is written in the ancient historical books, it is italicized by us. The frontiers of the Garabagh province are as follows. The southern frontier begins from the Hudafarin Bridge and goes till the Sunik Bridge, the Araz River. Currently, it's located between the districts of Gazakh, Shamsadil, and Demirshahsanli, and the officials of the Russian state call it in Russian the Krasnomost, which means Great Bridge. The eastern frontier runs across the Kur River and merges with the Araz River near Jawad village and then falls to the Caspian Sea. On the northern frontier, the boundary of Garabagh with Yelizaveta is defined by the Goran River as it crosses with the Kur River, and then the Kur River bypasses many places and joins the Araz River. The western frontier is formed by the high Garabagh mountains called Gushbag, Salvarti, and Artikli. This was written during the first days after the Russian occupation and colonization, and such an exact description of the Garabagh territory and frontiers can be explained by the following reasons. 1. On the one hand, this fact is written by a statesman who was dealing directly with the governance of Garabagh. In other words, this fact is an official description based upon official documents. Those are the words told by a statesman serving the interests of Russia. On the other hand, this fact is not only based upon the reality and experience, but proved by the original sources. It's not by accident that Mirza Jamal refers to the ancient historical books in order to prove this just vision of the issue. As it is seen, there was in history the whole nation of the name Garabagh rather than Daghly-Qarabakh, the geographical entity of all times covering the entire territory of Garabagh, its mountains and plains. In other words, the notion of Daghly-Qarabakh is a kind of byproduct and name applied to one part of Garabagh in accordance with separatist dreams. Simple logic proceeds. If there is Daghly-Qarabakh site, there is to say that there is also the plain Garabagh. The incontestable reality is today there is Daghly-Qarabakh and also Iran Garabagh in Azerbaijan. Either plain Garabagh or mountains Garabagh were in historical times the motherland and cradle of the Azerbaijani people, which definitely call this region Gara and Ba. Hundreds of ancient and the most extraordinary folkloric arts and pieces of music of the Azerbaijani people were specially created in Garabagh. They are linked to Garabagh. Garabagh from the ancient times to the Khanate period, up to the Arabian Caliphate. Garabagh from the ancient times to the Khanate period, up to the Arabian Caliphate. Garabagh is not only a region of Azerbaijan, it's one of the regions of the world that has an ancient history. The ancient settlements of Homo sapiens were revealed in the cave of Azur, which is also located in these territories. The settlement of human beings proved that Garabagh is one of the cradles of civilization that emerged in the region from the Mediterranean basin and Eastern Africa. The Azerbaijani scientist Hussein, who studied in the Azur cave, has written, "The stone implements studied in the Azur cave and the cultural creations show its proximity with the cultural complex all the way in Eastern Africa. At the same time, there are different methods in manufacturing these labor implements. This fact enables us to those names implements are the cultural samples of the Hydrologic Culture extracted from the inner layers of the Azur cave. And the age of the Hydrologic Culture can be very ancient, even dating back to 1,200,000 years. years. The jawbone of a man named a human being of Azov as Nicanthropus was discovered in the Azov layer of the Azov cave in 1986. The Azov man is believed to have lived 350,000 to 400,000 years ago. The master culture is represented mainly by the Talar cave. The archaeological studies analyses carried on Garabagh can determine an ample development which had taken place in the Mesolithic and Analysis stages of the Stone Age. Wide-scale change has taken place in Garabagh during the Analysis of 4th millennium BC Bronze and early Iron stages and the 4th millennium beginning of the 1st millennium. The Hydrologic culture was well developed in the late Bronze and the Iron Ages, 13th, 7th centuries BC. The egg bed of his epoch with a cuneiform engraving linked to Adeniraris ruler of Shur was discovered at the archaeological monument located in graveyard near Hydrologic. Such discoveries of artifacts prove the existence of economic and cultural links of this region with the Near East. Parallel to the economic and social life and development, the ethnic and political processes were also underway. The powerful state of Mana, 6th century BC, had emerged in the south of Azerbaijan. The state of Mana succeeded in maintaining its independence in its wars with assuring Urartu. The land of northern Azerbaijan, including the territory of Garabagh itself, didn't fall under the control of Urartu. In the historical period of time, the ethnic known as Armenians didn't exist in the South Caucasus at all. Renowned researchers, authors of joint monographic writings, are of the same opinion while describing the political history of Transcaucasia. The main part of the state of Urartu was located out of the Soviet frontiers. During the Antiquity and the Medieval Age, the areas of dense population of the Armenians were located far away from the modern Armenia's south borders. The situation changed with the emergence of the state of Media, 672-550 BC, which ended the existence of the state Urartu. Media had conquered southern eastern territory of Transcaucasia. This rule had persisted during the period of the Achaemenids, 550-330 BC. After Alexander the Great, 336-323 BC, has conquered the state of the Achaemenids, the political processes in the northern Azerbaijan had entered into a new phase. As a result of these processes and after the short rule of Alexander the Great and his death, the empire collapsed into many parts. Subsequently, the state of Atropatana and the state of Albania were respectively formed in the south and north of Azerbaijan. Recently, historians of Azerbaijan have given a great tribute to the studies of this period by their own scientific research works, which were ostensibly falsified by the Armenian authors. The scientists of Azerbaijan have enriched the studies on Atropatana and the state of Albania by their new research works. We don't judge it necessary to name all the works in this book. From the 4th century BC, after all, the state of Atropatana had land in the north of Azerbaijan too, and in this period of time a part of the territories of Garabagh was subordinated to the state of Azerbaijan. Having emerged parallel to the state of Atropatana, the state of Albania, which existed approximately from the 4th century BC till the 8th century AD, played a great role in the history of Azerbaijan during this 1200-year period. Albania has enlarged its borders, which covered the whole territory of Garabagh, and the state stirred hard to preserve Garabagh within its own borders and succeeded in doing so, except in some cases. 6 maps of MAHMUDOV concerning the state of Albania, including its integral part as Garabagh, the territory of the historical provinces Sakasena, Athena Uti, Arktena Arsak, Arakhana, etc., and the historical dynamics of its borders are incontestably testifying to this idea. Garabagh belonged to the Azerbaijan state of Albania. The ethnos that had lived in this area with the Savdav, Gargar and others were Alban tribes. The first arrival of Armenians to the region of the South Caucasus refers to circa of the 2nd millennium BC. As they entered this region, their aggressive activities were initiated against the regional states and peoples. In this epoch, the Armenians named the tiny Armenian kingdom located at the eastern part of Small Asia, the Great Armenia, and timed it to call all lands that were settled by Armenian nomads as Pearl Armenian territories. At the Roman period, wrote to Tigran II in 66 BC, this legend of the Great Armenia became fully constructed because they became as the vassals of Rome. This order lasted till the 4th century AD. Armenians claimed that the historical lands of the state of Albania were an integral part of Armenia. This is neither scientific nor historical grounds. In contradiction to this, the Azerbaijan Albanian state continued to have independent policy, and the historical provinces of Garabagh were parts of that state. Research has written, the study of sources and the realities of 1st and 7th centuries ensured us to say that the southern frontier of the state of Albania lay alongside the Aras River. The inclusion of Karabakh to Azerbaijan and the existence of various Turkic ethnos in this territory from very ancient times are also proved by the legendary epic of Azerbaijan and all Turkic peoples, Kitab Dede being an oral folkloric monument of literature. The epic of Dede was widely disseminated during the 6th-7th centuries in Garabagh as well as in all Azerbaijani territories, including the Lake of Gecha. As confirmed in this valuable heroic saga, some of those heroes have visited and met even with the Prophet Muhammad himself. The famous Oznamari Kitab Diyarbakir, written by Abu Bakr Tehran in 1470, written by the order of Uzun Hasan, 1453-1478, ruler of the Argonian state, mentions that summer pastures at the Gecha Sea in Garabagh belonged to the ancient Oghuz Turks, and Oghuz Khan, the founder of Oghuz Turks, was buried near the Gecha Sea. Bayandur Khan lived in Garabagh and had summer houses on the Gecha Sea and was buried there too. Garabagh during the Arabian Caliphate, on Greganization and Armenization in Artsakh. Garabagh during the Arabian Caliphate, on Greganization and Armenization in Artsakh. The main changes in the history of Garabagh start with invasions by the Arabian Caliphate, and as a result of this occupation, the caliphs of the state of Albania. Until the Arabian occupation, the territory of Garabagh was one ethnic origin, that's the Azerbaijan Alban origin. However, the tragic policy demonstrated in Azerbaijan by the Armenian Caliphate at that time, which led to the provision of religious dominance of Armenians in the mountainous parts of the region, gradually showed up as well in the ethnic field. The process of Greganization and later Armenization of the population of Artsakh, the historical region of the state of Albania, started. The academician MAHMUDOV has investigated particularly the reason and the course of the process of Greganization and Armenianization of this region of Azerbaijan, the essence of the Armenian Caliphate cooperation, and other issues, as well as the reflection in the historical literature. Certainly, the process of Armenization was to take more time than that of Greganization, and in fact it did. Therefore, MAHMUDOV protests against the following words of the accommodation. The Alban Church was considered as a part of the Armenian Church since the 7th century, and at that time the districts of Syunik, Artsakh, Ut, and others in the Iran region were Armenianized. And writes, it's not worth it that the two different notions, Armenization and Greganization, are mixed. Iran can speak only about Greganization and of the Iran population through the help of the Armenian Church. Yeramian's point of view regarding to this note is right, since the districts of Syunik and most of the Artsakh and the Iran region were Armenianized only in the early 12th century. This idea confirms once again that the people living in these parts of Garabagh were not originally Armenians. On the contrary, they were local Azerbaijan Alban tribes which were later Armenianized, or rather lived, Greganized, and then Armenianized. Odontologic research, which provide information about the ethnogang of the population as well as the mutual relationships, and based on modern scientific achievement also proves this. Not accidentally, following the destruction of the Arabian Caliphate, the Principalates of the Sunni Kachun were established in part of Albania. In the late 12th century, the Principality of Sunni fell and its reigning dynasty ended with the death of Prince Grigorian Sumbat in 1166. The Kachun Principality, created in the territory of Artsakh in the late 12th or 13th centuries, was a part of ancient Albania. Thus, not accidentally, there was not a single Armenian state among the surviving local states in the territory of the Arabian Caliphate when the latter collapsed. This proves that unlike Azerbaijan and Georgia, Armenians don't have a history of statehood in the Southern Caucasus at all. This period of time, the beginning of the 13th centuries, particularly the period of the reign of Shazakh Atabey Shirin-Shahs, was the time when Azerbaijan was becoming very mighty in the Southern Caucasus. The states of Shazakh and Atabey actually united the historical land of Azerbaijan politically. The Kachun Principality, created in the territory of former Albania, reached its highest rate of progress during the reign of Hassan Jalal, 1215-1261, who belonged to the Mehrani dynasty. Not accidentally, the narrative and epigraphic monuments of the time mention the title ruler of Albania side by side with the titles the Dung of Kachun countries, the majestic Duke of the Kachun and Artsakh countries. In other words, all the title of Hassan Jalal belongs to the Azerbaijan-Alban history. One of the most important examples of Alban architecture, the Khan Gajar Monastery, was built during this period of reign. Garabagh is one of the centuries of political life in Azerbaijan, 30s, 40s of the 18th century. Garabagh is one of the centuries of political life in Azerbaijan, 30s, 40s of the 18th century. After putting an end of the Atabey state that was weakened due to first attack of Mongolians 1220-1222, Harizm Shah Jalaluddin reigned in Azerbaijan 1225-1231, that included Garabagh. Garabagh as well as other Azerbaijan territorials fell under the dominion of the Supreme Mongolian Khanate 1239-1256 and further into Hulaku state 1256-1327 after the second attack of Mongolians, which completed the occupation of Azerbaijan 1231-1239. There's much further information and a better investigation about the history of Garabagh during this period. In that period, the word combination Garabagh was already used to describe a specific geographic territory. Priyev writes, the name Arangara was first mentioned in relation with an explanation of the events of 1284 AD in the book Jama at-Tawarikh by Rashid ad-Din. At that time, Garabagh was a single territory within Iran and consisted of mountains as well as fruitful territories. Garabagh played an important role in the political history of the Hulaku state in the 13th 14th centuries. Priyev remarks, the fact that the Mongolian rulers constantly spent a winter in Garabagh led to several governmental events which took place here. From this point of view, it's worth nothing that two Mongolian rulers, Kazan Khan and Alpasha, came to the throne in Garabagh, and other two rulers, Sargun Khan and Abu Said, died in Garabagh. In the 13th 14th centuries, also Garabagh was a territory of Azerbaijan with a population consisting of Azerbaijanis. In the 15th century, Garabagh was a part of the Azerbaijan Garagoyinlu 1410-1467 and Argoyinlu 1468-1501 states. However, during the reign of the Argoyinlu dynasty, an event happened that would be remarkable in the further history of Garabagh. In the 15th century, the ruler of Argoyinlu state, Jahan Shah, provided the generation of the former Alban ruler Hassan Jalal with the title of Malik. Later on, Jalal were divided into 5 Alban principalities, Malikliks: Gulistan, Dorabad, Kachun, Varandar, and Dizak. The creation of the Azerbaijan Safavid state 1501 was the basis of the centralization process of all Azerbaijan territories. In the mid-16th century, the centralization of Azerbaijan land at the unified state Azerbaijan territories, and in the mid-16th century the centralization of Azerbaijan led at the unified state was completed, and thus the Azerbaijan Safavid state became a minor state of the region, second only to the Ottoman Empire. In such a case, it was impossible for Armenians to have any ethnic political advantages at that time. On the contrary, in that period of ethnic and political borders of Azerbaijan became clearer. Safavid established four Beyler Beyliks in Azerbaijan, one of which was the Garabagh or Ganja Beyler Beylik. Detailed notebooks written by Ottomans in these territories create a clear idea of the administrative territorial division of that Beyler Beylik. In accordance with information from 1593, the Ganja-Garabagh province consists of 7 sanjaks and 36 nahiyas. 1.3 thousand place names in these territories suggested in the detailed notebooks. Nearly all of them belong to Azerbaijans. None of them ever belonged to Armenians. Following the weakening of the Safavid state in 1736, the territory of Azerbaijan became a field of wars between Iran, Russian, and the Ottoman states. In that period, the lands of Ganja-Garabagh were within the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman notebooks compiled at the time prove as well that Azerbaijanis were the main population of the region. In compliance with calculations in 1727, the Ganja-Garabagh population totaled 122,000 people. 80,300 of them, 66%, were Azerbaijan Turks, 37,800, 31%, were Gregorianized Albans, 300,700, 3.1% were Kurds. In this period, Gregorianized Albans, assisted by Russia, became more actively politically. On the other hand, Nadir Shah of Shah 1736-1747, who overthrew the last Safavid ruler Abbas III and became to power, took heavy measures of punishment against the Turkic Muslim population of the Ganja-Garabagh Beyler Beylik, which refused to recognize him as the legitimate ruler. This factor strengthened the position of the Alban Maliks of Garabagh and stimulated their separatism. After Nadir's death, his state fell into two parts and local state khanates were created in Azerbaijan. In other words, Azerbaijan restored its independence once again in the form of its khanate. Two separate khanates, Ganja and Garabagh, were established in the territory of the former Ganja-Garabagh district. Let us look individually at the Garabagh Khanate, for the territorial claims of Armenians against Azerbaijan are linked mainly with it. Garabagh Khanate. Restoration of the Azerbaijan statehood tradition in Garabagh. Garabagh Khanate. Restoration of the Azerbaijan statehood tradition in Garabagh. The founder of the Garabagh Khanate, one of the newly independent Azerbaijan states following the downfall of Nadir Shah's Empire, was Panahalli Bey Javanshir, one of the distinguished statesmen of Azerbaijan. He was born in the village of Sarıcalı, Garabagh. Leader of the Garabagh Khanate and historian Mirza Jalal writes, after gaining rule of our Garabagh, Ganja, Tiflis, and Shirvan districts, the deceased Nadir Shah would call all the brave and laborious people he had met and knew in the districts and villages, employ them to high positions, and provide them salary, respect, and career. Among them was Panah Khan, who was known as Panahalli Khan. Panahalli Bey Sarıcalı Javanshir was distinguished in every field for bravery in wars and fight, particularly in the wars of the deceased Nadir with the troops of Rome, means the war against the Ottoman Empire 1730s. However, after the Mughal Congress, Nadir began to punish sternly the people of Garabagh who did want to accept this power and exile the Turkish Muslim population of this district of Afghanistan and Khorasan. Panahalli Bey's brother, Fazl Ali Khan, was executed for rejecting this measure. Seeing this, Panahalli Bey made use of the fact that the Shah was in Khorasan, and he ran to the Garabagh district with several of his relatives and kindred in 1737-1738. When the Shah received the news about his escape, he sent heralds to catch him on the way. However, they failed. Nadir sent resolute decrees to the viceroy of the Azerbaijan rulers of Ganja, Tiflis, and Shirvan, demanding to catch and bring to him Panah Khan wherever they might find him. Panah Khan's family and the other relatives were punished and given a fine by the Shah's order, but it was in vain. Thus, even Nadir was alive, Panahalli Bey refused to obey him and tried to rule his native land, Garabagh, independently. Consequently, following Nadir Shah's death, an independent Azerbaijan state, Garabagh Khanate, was created in the lands of Garabagh. Now after the Garabagh Khanate was announced as an independent state, the main task was to achieve its strengthening. One of the first steps taken by Panahan in this field was to bring back the Turkish Muslim population of Garabagh whom Nader was exiled. The return of the internally displaced person and their settlement in their native lands strengthened the Garabagh. Future Khan of Garabagh, 10-year-old Ibrahim Khalil, was also among those becoming back first. When the Garabagh Khanate was created, the cities of Tabriz, Ardabil, Ganja, Shemki, Baku, Nakhchivan, Shaki, and Derban were not yet established here, whereas the presence of such socio-economic centers was of great importance for the further development of the Khanate. Non-defensive installations as well as building of new cities should be regarded as valuable military, political, and construction achievements of Panahan. One of the first steps taken in this direction was the building of the Brat castle in 1748, the name of which was linked with an ancient Azerbaijan Turkish tribe Bayat. Khan gathered his entire family, relatives, and all the family members of the region's elders. The people living nearby were many men and artisans of Tabriz and Ardabil districts. Hearing about Panahan's progress, his behavior and love, moved here with their families and settled in the Bayat castle. Panahan's activity in the field of independent state building resulted in the state's official recognition. Mirza Jamal writes, in the Muslim era of 1161, Christian era 1745, 1748, in fact, the decree signed by Adil Shah providing Panahan with the title of Khan and his appointment of the position of the ruler of Garabagh as well as precious gifts, a horse with golden saddle and sword adorned with jewelry, reached the Bad Castle where they were living at that time through a close relative of the wise Karim admiration. Adil Shah's decree was in fact a tardy document. The true power had been gained before the Shah's decree and was regardless of it. The unsuccessful attack of the Shaki Khanate of Garabagh played an important role in Panahan's recognition as the ruler of Garabagh. The Khan of Shaki, Hydrologic started after his unsuccessful Bayat incursion in 1748. So far, Panahan was a silver without coins. We came, minted this coin with his name and came back. In other words, Panahan Khan had declared himself Khan and I conferred his position with my defeat. These words of Hajjaj Khan, which became a saying among people, had in fact a much stronger effect than Adil Shah's decree. Ahmed Bejan writes, after this victory, the legend about the bravery of Panahan, which became widespread everywhere, subjected all the Muslim tribes living in Garabagh at the time to him without force. At the same time, the Bayat fight exposed this castle was not going to stand future historical tests. Therefore, a new castle had to be built. Mirza Ad-Ghazalbeh writes, Panahan built a castle in Tarnakut, which was known as Shahula. He ordered to build mosques, houses, karks, and bathhouses with stone in line. He finished all of these in 1165 and made that place his abode. Should I try it written? As Panahan strengthened the destructive activity of feudal Maliks who spread a stacked type of state increased also. Preventing this became a vital job from the military political point of view. Otherwise, the territorial administrative unit of Khanate could be lost. Regional sources confirm as well historical truths. Mir Mehdi Khan was very correct in writing. The 5 mahals in Garabagh were together called the region of Tamsi before, but now they are different names. Mr. Ad-Ghazalbeh wrote about feudal Maliks. One of these Maliks is Disa. Their Malik is Malik Yagub. He ran away from Lari, sat on the throne of Malik during the reign of Nader Shah at his order and gained respect. The second Mahal is Varandin. Their Maliks were Maliks of the Shah Nazali dynasty. They belonged to a more ancient generation and enjoyed greater trust. The noblemen of Gaucha were their ancestry. Later they escaped from Gaucha. Khan came to Garabagh and became drunk with power after drinking the bowl of possession of Malik in Varandar Mahal. The third Mahal is Kachin. Their Maliks is Hassan Jalal's son, made the bride of power beautiful and became rulers. After his family was deprived of the rank of Malik, this Mahal is no independent Malik. Finally, the deceased Panahan's Jovanshir, son of statehood and flag of majesty, raised on the horizon of power and lighted all parts of the Garabagh district with plenary luxury. At the other officials of this eternal state, Malik Mirza Khan from Khinzaristan minted the coin of the rank of Malik with his name. Further, his son Alabard Grand Malik Karaman raised the flag of Malikli to the skies. The first Mahal's Tulabur, the Malik is Malik Allahkul, they are originally from Mahaz. They came and became Maliklis in Tulabur and settled in a really strong country in the middle of the Tartar River. They made Karim castle, shortly of Tulabur, which had very difficult roads to rebar, shelter and habitation. They appropriated Tulabur independently and gained great fame. The Shah gave him the rank and Reb of Sultan. The fifth Mahal is Talish, and the Malik is Malik Yusuf. They sprang up from Shirvan. For some time they lived in the village of Talish. Many of them became Maliks from them once. Further Maliks occupied the Gulistan castle and settled there. Thus, except for Khachun, other Maliksis and their generations, they belonged to were not originally from Garabagh and come to this land from other places. They were not Armenians but representatives of the former Alban generations. Therefore, the fact that Armenian nationalists in order to justify the territorial claims against Azerbaijan considered those Malikliks as a continuance of the Armenian statehood is radically wrong or rather scientific falsification. On the other hand, migrant Maliklis failed to create even a small state union after gaining power over the Mahals in Garabagh. They couldn't rise above the level of the heads of Mahals who lived in isolated condition and often fought against each other. There is no root of theirs in Garabagh in the period before the 17th century. Maliks represented the forces which wanted strengthening of the feudal disorderlies in Garabagh. The separatist counter-feudal activity of Maliks hindered the centralization work going on the Khanate and entire country. Their participation in the alien forces attacks in Garabagh struck a hard blow to the independence of Garabagh Khanate. Therefore, the measure taken in order to eliminate the separatist trends of Maliklis for an ethnic conflict, but to fight against the attempt upon the independence of the Garabagh Khanate. The first among the Kamsa Malik to recognize the independence of Panah Khan's power was Malik Shah Nazar. This was achieved through the marriage diplomacy. In other words, Ibrahim Khalil Khan married Malik Shah Nazar's daughter Furzad. The Malik of Khachun ul-Bab recognized Panah Khan's power after he was defeated in Balagaya. Nevertheless, the hostile policy of Dizak, Chilabert and Talish Maliks went on for several years. Ahmed Bey Javanshir writes, after the fierce resistance of the Malik of Turov Dizak, Malik Yagan, together with his sons and relatives who kept the mine of treasure, gathered from neighboring provinces, where some of them were killed and some adopted Islam. Malik of Chilabert Allahkulu Sultan first accepted his power, but later he was killed on Panah Khan's order after being accused of treason. His brother Malik Hatem went into alliance with the fifth Malik of Talush, Malik Yusuf, and defended their settlement from attacks by Panah Khan's forces for a long time, but retreated to the impregnable Kirmuk castle after being defeated in the Mardikard village. After staying in the castle for about a year, he had to look for a shelter in foreign countries. However, his political activity didn't end with this. That is, later on, both he and his sons, son of the first Malik Majnun, were constantly attacking Garabagh. The achievements of Panah Khan in subordinating the Maliks was continued by his son Ibrahim Khan. The Maliks of Garabagh, Yesai from Dizak, Majnun from Tulabert, and Beylarian from Gulistan, refused to subordinate themselves to Ibrahim Khan. However, Malik Shah Nazar from Warandar and Mirza Khan from Khachun accepted his power and joined the patriotic alliance of forces he had created. The elites encircled the Turk castle in 1781. Malik Yesai surrounded and Malik Bahtam came to power here. However, soon he also appeared to be treacheries. From 1783, Russia began to intervene as well in the struggle between separatist Maliks and Ibrahim Khan. Intending to occupy the South Caucasus, Russia tried to create a Christian state in the Azerbaijan territory, or rather its supporter here with the help of those Maliks. Ibrahim Khan managed to gather the hostile Maliks in Shusha with the help of his high diplomatic skill. Based on documents, he proved that they betrayed the Garabagh Khanate and arrested them. Malik Majnun and Bav were put in the Shusha jail. Malik Bahtam was given to the Khan of Ardabil for his faults. The Al of the Maliks, Catholicos of Ganjasar Monastery, Johans and his brother were arrested and put in jail as well. However, the Maliks managed to escape from the Shusha jail. They came to Tiflis and began to prepare the coup d'etat against the Garabagh Khanate with the help of the Georgian Tsar Irakli II (1744–1788), and the Russian colonel Burnashov. The enemies beginning a crusade against the Garabagh Khanate approached Ganja. However, this crusade fell due to the start of the Russian-Turkish War in 1787–1791. Ibrahim Khan managed to preserve the integrity of the independent Garabagh Khanate. Al-Muhammad Qajar (1742–1797), who came to power in Iran the summer 1795, attacked Garabagh. The 33-day siege of Shusha was unsuccessful. After Shusha attacked Tiflis, Al-Muhammad Qajar had to retreat after the attack of Russian troops commanded by Zubov. When the Russian Tsarina Catherine II (1764–1796) died, Zubov was called back from Azerbaijan. In 1797, Al-Muhammad Qajar attacked Garabagh once again and captured Shusha, but then he was killed there. In late 18th and early 19th centuries, the invasive activity of Russian South Caucasus, including Azerbaijan, increased. In 1801, Georgia was annexed to the Russian Empire. The Darbil Khan 1803 and Ganja Khanate 1804 Azerbaijan were occupied. Under such circumstances, Ibrahim Khan concluded an agreement with the commander of Russian troops, Sisyan of Kirekçay. Pursuant to the Kirekçay Treaty, the Garabagh Khanate was annexed to Russia, especially the Muslim Azerbaijan territory. The Kirekçay Treaty, which reflects a historical reality, is at the same time a reliable document proving that Garabagh, as well as its mountainous part, belongs to the Azerbaijan people. Garabagh under the Russian Empire. Garabagh under the Russian Empire. The Tsarist regime in Garabagh, massive resettlement of Armenians to Garabagh. By the Kirekçay Treaty of 1805, the Garabagh Khanate in fact was annexed to Russia, keeping the Khan dominion after 17 years conveyed a strategic purpose. Ibrahim Khan's execution of 1806 demonstrated Russia's rejection of area law. Under his condition of dominion of Mehdi Gulu Khan 1806-1822, the son of Ibrahim Khan was not stable. Under this condition, the Tsar strengthened the occupying regime and in order to firmly establish the Khanate territory tried to weaken the economic condition of the ruling Muslim stratum and vice versa to raise Griganized and Armenianized Albans whom he considered supportive to his superior position. After the abolition of the Khanate, a Kagyu administrator rule as in the other territories in Azerbaijan was established here as well, and it included the military Muslim district. At that time, Lieutenant General Madatov, 1882-1829, who had taken part in annexation operations of the Russian army and who was Armenian by origin, established an Armenian-Russian annexation regime in the true sense of the word. As a result of the influence of the 1830 uprisings, the Tsar carried out administrative military reform on April 10, 1840. In accordance with this reform, the Garabagh region had been changed to the Shusha Yazd and put under the Caspian province's supervision. With that, the Garabagh nation had lost its political meaning and stayed only at the geographical notch. During this administrative territorial division of 1846, the Shusha Yazd had been put under the newly established Shamakh provinces since 1859 Baku supervision. In 1867, when the Elizabethville gubernia had been established, the Shusha Yazd was put under its supervision. The territory of Shusha Yazd was divided into three additional Yazds, and Yazur, Javanshur, and Jabrail were created here. By that, the Shusha Yazd also lost its administrative political ruling. Such administrative territorial division had been carried out for that specific purpose. These reforms gave a widespread opportunity to Armenians to be represented in the ruling system. Tourism occupying North Azerbaijan territories at the same time carried out the Armenianization policy of the territories. Since the Turkmenchay Treaty of 1828, this event had become more regular and purposeful. The resettlement of the Armenians from Iran to North Azerbaijan was confirmed by the 15th article of this treaty. Due to this article, the Shah gives officials and inhabitants a year to move from Iran province to Russia with their families freely from the day to carry, possess and sell immovable property without fixing customs and tax prices to their properties and goods for sale without laying obstacles of governmental and local authorities. As far as the immovable property concerned, 5-year period is determined for its selling or for a decision to be taken on it. This article has been purposefully included in the Turkmen Treaty ensuring that Armenians could massively and freely move from Iran to North Azerbaijan, including Garabagh. Legal, political, guarantee and organizational measures have been taken related to the resettlement of Armenians. By the Hydrologic Treaty of 1829, resettlement of Armenians from the Ottoman Empire to the recently occupied North Azerbaijan territories began to carried out. One of the principal directions in the resettlement of Armenians were Garabagh lands. Your Majesty, don't allow Armenians to settle in the central lands of Russia by any means. They are such a race which, having lived there for several decades, would start declaring all over the world that these places were their primordial lands. Nabiyev abstracted from the letter to Russian Emperor. During the abolition of the Garabagh Khanate, the ethnic composition of its population was reflected in a description which was compiled by instruction of the Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Army in Caucasus, MAHMUDOV, 1816-1827. If we compare statistics since 1593, you can see that despite the Armenianization policy carried out in Garabagh, the Azerbaijanis formed the majority of the population again. According to the description from 20.95 families in Garabagh provinces, 15.729 were Azerbaijanis, 4,366 were Armenians. It should be noted that the majority of these Armenians were Greganized and Armenianized from Albans. As a result of mass resettlement of Armenians to Garabagh appeared new Armenian villages. Sometime later, Armenians erected monuments in Garabagh in honor of their resettlement, but in the 80s of the 20th century, during territorial claims, they falsified them. During only 1828-30 years, 40,000 Armenians from Iran, 90,000 Armenians from the Ottoman Empire were resettled to North Azerbaijan as well as in Garabagh. Official information would numbered over 200,000 together with unofficial Armenian immigrants. After resettlement, the Armenians number in the ethnic composition of Garabagh started growing. Completion of Greganization and Armenianization of Azerbaijan Alban population of Garabagh. Completion of Greganization and Armenianization of Azerbaijan Alban population of Garabagh. As was mentioned above, the Greganization and Armenianization of Alban population of Dal Garabagh was a long process. The aborigines of Garabagh, as the population of other North Azerbaijan lands, have been Alban tribes. At the beginning of the 4th century, in some places of Albania, including Kyrgyz, Christianity was spread. During the Arabian Caliphate's occupation and the rule in 7th and 9th centuries, the Islamic religion was spread in the country, but Albans living in the mountainous parts of Garabagh remained Christians. Armenian Gregorian missionaries immigrated to the South Caucasus and used favorable conditions established as a result of the Arabian Caliphate's occupation began to Greganize and their Armenianized Christian Alban population of the mountainous part of Garabagh. The historical process of Armenianization lasted longer than Greganization. The Christian population in the mountainous part of Garabagh called themselves Albans, and the latter to Peter I. This proves that they didn't yet consider themselves Armenians at the beginning of 18th century. From the beginning of 18th century, during the Armenianization process of Albania, a fundamental change took place. Intervention by Russia in the region set the resettlement of Armenians from other countries, the South Caucasus, including Azerbaijan, strengthened the Armenian factor. This policy was a turning point in the history of Greganized Albans living in the mountainous parts of Garabagh. Their Armenianization process entered the last stage. During the Russia-Turkey wars, 1804-1813, 1826-1828, and Russian-Aryan Wars 1806-1812, 1828-1829, especially after 1828 Turkmenchay and 1829 Hydrologic Treaty mass resettlement of Armenians from Iran and Ottoman states to other regions of Azerbaijan, including Garabagh, and the Armenianization process of the Greganized Aborigines Albans. In 1836, Alban Catholicism was annulled. Only after this, it's possible to use the word Armenian in connection with the Alban population, and it can be used tentatively. Despite all this, the Garabagh Armenians compared to other Armenians have all historically kept their specific features connected with their Alban roots. Beginning of Armenian genocide against Azerbaijanis in Azerbaijan, including Garabagh. Beginning of Armenian genocide against Azerbaijanis in Azerbaijan, including Garabagh. After the 1830s, the Armenians' mass resettlement in North Azerbaijan land as well as to Garabagh continued. Russian scholar in Caucasian studies SHUKUROV wrote that 1911, more than 1 million Armenians out of 1.3 million in Caucasus were immigrants. Despite this, since 1916, 51% of the population again was Azerbaijani and 46% was Armenian, together with local Alban origin Armenians. In Garabagh, within the Khanate borders, 1 million out of 1.3 million Armenians living in Transcaucasia are immigrants. We have moved them to this area. SHUKUROV, new to Russian business in Transcaucasia, destroying sale of migrant to foreigners. St. Petersburg, 1911. Settlement of Armenians in the mountains part of Garabagh near the Aborigines who practiced the same religion became widespread. This was done in order to provide compact with the living of immigrant Armenians and carried the strategic aim. The strengthening of the administrative management system of Armenians and the mechanical increasing of their number by way of resettlement was followed by the strengthening of their economic potential as well as the result of comprehensive supporting and favorable conditions established by tourism. Armenians became strong in the economic life of Garabagh. As a result of a supportive and purposeful policy of the Russian Emperor, enhanced economic potential had been achieved of Armenians. In North Azerbaijan, the discriminatory policy of tourism during the abolishment of the commitment system upon all Burian lands in 1872 began to draw great attention in Baku. As a result, Azerbaijanis received only 5%, but Armenians received more than 50% of land areas. 55 big and middle companies out of 167 operating in Baku belonged to Armenians, etc. A comprehensive program for increasing the cultural educational level of Armenians was established at this time. Despite this, Garabagh and its central Shusha city still remained one of the administrative, political and cultural centers of the Azerbaijani people. Despite all these obstacles and counteraction of tourist ruling and its colonial policy, Garabagh was being developed as an Azerbaijan land. So, for a short time, Armenians massively settled in Azerbaijan as well as in the Caucasus while obtaining widespread opportunities provided by tourist Russia for administrative, political, socio-administrative and cultural development. Thus, they began clearly fighting for the realization of a great Armenian idea in Azerbaijan land. One of the main parts of this idea was to annihilate the local Azerbaijani population of Garabagh, Yerevan, Nakhchivan, and other Azerbaijan lands and capture the land where the Azerbaijanis were living. As Armenians' revolts arose against the Ottoman state starting in 1890 had not been successful, the center of this fight became North Azerbaijan. Beginning in 1905, Armenians committed mass genocide against Azerbaijan people. The genocide policy of Armenians against Azerbaijan and Garabagh was more tragic. Even the 1905-1906 annihilation carried out by Armenians didn't satisfy them. They tried their best to use the historical condition caused by the First World War to establish mythic a great Armenian state. Following a near revolt against the Ottoman state in 1915, Armenians gathered their forces in the South Caucasus and began to continue their genocide against Azerbaijanis. Because of the anarchy in the Caucasus with the overthrowing of tourist Karim in 1917 in February, then the seizing of power by Bolsheviks in Russia 1917 October. During this long-term historical period, Armenian armed groups serving in the Russian army joined with Bolsheviks and began a new period of more terrible annihilation against the Azerbaijanis. New mass genocide beginning with the March genocide of 1918 in Baku dealt a heavy blow to the Azerbaijani people. By establishing the Azerbaijan People's Republic, a new period began Azerbaijan history. The Azerbaijan People's Republic avoided complete annihilation of the Azerbaijan people by armed Azerbaijan Armenian band of robbers and Dashnak Bolshevik regime in North Azerbaijan. Garabagh period of the Azerbaijan People's Republic 1918-1920. Garabagh period of the Azerbaijan People's Republic 1918-1920. On May 28, 1980, after Russian bondage continuing approximately 120 years, Azerbaijan established a new independent state in North Azerbaijan. In its independence declaration of Azerbaijan People's Republic declared its illegal inheritance of North Azerbaijan land occupied by Russia according to Gulistan in 1917, 1913 and Turkmenistan in 1928 treaties. The first article of Independence Declaration said,
Since today peoples of Azerbaijan have sovereign rights, Azerbaijan consisting of East and Southern Caucasus is a full right independent state. The Azerbaijan People's Republic also published a map of its territory and well-founded from a legal political aspect. It goes without saying Garabagh is an integral part of Azerbaijan together with other North Azerbaijan lands belonging to the territory of Azerbaijan People's Republic. But at that time the recently declared Armenian Republic was also laying a groundless claim to Garabagh. The Azerbaijan People's Republic rejected this claim. Chairman of Parliament of the Azerbaijan People's Republic Topchubashov 1862-1934 announced at the negotiations held on November 18, 1918 with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Ottoman state. The Garabagh issue is thrown into the Middle East, not an issue of 5 or 10 villages, The dispute is on the whole for Sanjaks, Shusha, Javanshir, Jabrail, and Zengezur. It's a territory of such Khanate where a number of Armenians and Azerbaijanis isn't equal, and there isn't any basis to speak about the absolute majority of Armenians, and also they are not local inhabitants of this territory. They were resettled here after war with Russia from Turkey, finally Armenians in Garabagh densely but alongside Muslims. Despite this, we are supporters of a peaceful solution of this issue. Armenians continued annihilation that had taken place before also during the Azerbaijan People's Republic period. Taking into consideration the situation of January 1990, the Azerbaijan government established Garabagh General Governorship, which continued the Shusha, Javanshir, Jabrail and Zengezur reasts. Sultan was appointed to this point. Minister of Foreign Affairs of Armenia, Tigranian, protested against establishing Garabagh Governor General administration, but it in response the Azerbaijan People's Republic government called it Grand List, and these territories were stated as an integral part of Azerbaijan territorial claims of Armenians from one side, worsening the relations first with English, then with Americans on the other side, made the Garabagh Governor General work in a tense situation. At the end of 1919 and spring of 1920, Armenian Dashnag armed band of robbers committed an attack and massive massacre against the peaceful Azerbaijan population in Zengezur. Armenians didn't act peacefully in Javanshir as well. Their attacks on the foothill villages of the west became an ordinary event. Armenian band of robbers committed violent acts against the Azerbaijani population and the flat part of this district in the spring-summer months of 1918. Armenians blocking the Tartar River Swayta and the Sada water in other direction, thus the low-flying lands of the US were waterless and they did great damage to them. There was even a shortage of drinkable water in low-lying lands. Armenian band of robbers also attacked the peaceful population in other areas of Garabagh and Jabrail. In December 1918, Armenians' attacks on Azerbaijan villages of Jabrail became wider, and at the beginning of 1919 they had a more heinous character. Armenian savages were more extreme in the Shusha than in the political center of Garabagh's Shusha city. On December 20, 1922, Shadons, the former responsible representative of the Transcaucasian Control Committee in Garabagh, despite forging some truths, confessed that the entire Garabagh was included in Azerbaijan People's Republic's territory. During Azerbaijan People's Republic times of the most treacherous revolts of the Armenians happened in Shusha March 22, 1920 on Norris holiday. The separate revolt rose by the order of Bolsheviks who were planning to occupy Azerbaijan. At that time, despite opposing the revolt of Armenian separatists, in most places Armenians were able to seize the Asgaran fortress. Military political measures taken by the Azerbaijan People's Republic completely restored Azerbaijan's sovereign rights in Garabagh. Separatist revolts and atrocities committed by Armenians against Azerbaijanis in Garabagh was high treason against Azerbaijan. It was a stab in the back and weakened the northern borders of our country on the eve of the April 1920 occupation of Bolsheviks and put the existence of independent Azerbaijan state, Azerbaijan Republic, under danger. Granting autonomy to Garabagh 1920-1923. granting autonomy to Garabagh 1920-1923. Garabagh geography and the notion of Garabagh. Before explaining this problem, let's first look at the geography of Garabagh and the notion of Garabagh. According to it, a relief Garabagh is divided into two parts, lowlands and mountains. This reality is also confirmed in science. For example, Skibetsky, son of the famous researcher in Caucasian studies, Skibetsky writes in his article titled Caucasian Crisis, the entire mountainous part of the Garabagh Khanate was called Garabagh at that time. The range of Garabagh mountains in the east and the lands between the Zengezur Mountains in the west, as well as the Garabagh plateau separating the upper Garabagh and the lower and lower Garabagh, belonged to that territory. As it is known, the notion of Garabagh lost its previous administrative political meaning since the territory of Garabagh, or rather the lands of the former Garabagh Khanate, suffered different administrative divisions during the reign of Tsarist Russia. However, in the period of Azerbaijan People Republic 1918-1920, the notion of the Tsarist Russia, notion of Garabagh was again restored to its previous meaning. As is seen from the above-mentioned words of Shaduns, the term Garabagh had been created by Dashnaks at that very time. From then on, the notion of Garabagh began to have not only geographic but also political importance. Following the Bolsheviks coming to power in Azerbaijan, this notion began to have an administrative political meaning and turned into one of the main notions in relations between Azerbaijan and Armenia, as well as in the political vocabulary of Russia, which intervened into these relations. Meanwhile, the geographic range of Garabagh changed as well. Again, as Skibetsky wrote, the Garabagh plateau was granted autonomy in 1923 and was named Autonomous Garabagh Oblast, or simply Garabagh, within the new borders of Azerbaijan. Garabagh Autonomous Oblast is the creation chronology of its main event and conclusions deriving from this. In order to define the principal issues regarding the creation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, rather to imagine this process distinctly, let's look through the main events chronologically in accordance with their geographical location. A careful look at the table shows that the course of events was divided into two stages, until the resolution of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau dated July 5, 1921. After a resolution to granting autonomy to Garabagh, the events related to granting autonomy to Garabagh took place mainly between Azerbaijan first and second columns, in Caucasus Bureau and the Transcaucasia State Committee fifth column, while concerning Garabagh and granting, while Armenia actually stood aside from these processes. These facts require examination of the event concerning Garabagh and granting autonomy to it, as well as restoration of the objective history of the creation of Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. Nariman Declaration, December 1, 1928, July 5, 1921. Following the establishment of Soviet power in Azerbaijan, Sovnarchy was created and extraordinary commissioners were appointed to the regions. And Karakaz of 1938 was appointed the extraordinary commissaries of Garabagh. The Azerbaijan Soviet Karim delivers an ultimatum to Armenian Republic on April 3, 1920, demanding the withdrawal of Armenian forces from Zengezur and Garabagh. In May, the establishment of Soviet power in Garabagh was declared. At that time, Soviet Russia was continuing a plan of Sovietization of the Caucasus region and trying to control the activity of the existing and future states by putting forward the principles of delineation of new Soviet states. The instruction of the Political Bureau of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau to the Caucasian Front Military Revolutionary Council dated July 7 touched upon this issue. Following the establishment of Soviet power in Armenia on November 29, 1920, not only the delimitation of external borders but also divisions within its borders deteriorated. The telegram of Azarevkov, Azerbaijan Revolutionary Committee dated November 30 to the Armenian Soviet Republic, as well as its declaration date on November 1st, dealt with Garabagh and its mountainous part. The distortion of these documents in Armenian historical science is proven by fact. The declaration in fact declared that laborious villagers of Garabagh were granted the right to complete self-determination. In a statement dated December 28, 1920, the Armenian Revolutionary Committee stated that Armenia should take its hands off Nakhchivan, but Armenia didn't want to let Garabagh slip through their fingers. Garabagh was again made an agenda issue regarding the delimitation between Azerbaijan and Armenia. The Caucasian Bureau adopted the resolution willfully and without the concurrence of Azerbaijan on the inclusion of the article on belonging Garabagh to Armenia contained in the Armenian governmental statement in June 3, 1921. The Armenian Sovereign Council of People Commissars decreed this on June 12. Such course of events didn't satisfy Azerbaijan. The meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Political Bureau and Organization Bureau with the chairmanship of Kaminsky, 1895-1938, Secretary of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee, dated June 27 in Tiflis, discussed border issue between Azerbaijan and Armenia as a part of self-determination granted to Garabagh was expressed here for the first time. The almost settlement of the issue came through involvement of the Armenian and Muslim community to the Soviet building work, as stated in Comrade Narimanov's statement. It was entrusted to Narimanov to deliver the opinion of the Political Bureau and Organization Bureau to Tiflis. Narimanov spoke the chairman of the Azerbaijan Executive Committee, Jeven Minister of Foreign Affairs Huseynov, by direct line on that every day. Narimanov said that it is the conclusion of the Political and Organization Bureau. If they refer to my statement, the statement says literally the following: Garabagh is given the full right for self-determination. Huseynov: alright, I will deliver everything. In a way, I should say that our decision will definitely be received coldly. Again that day, Huseyn informed the Caucasian Bureau of this. It was decided to call the extraordinary plenum of the Caucasian Bureau on this issue and invite Narimanov and Masnikov to Tiflis. How an integral part of Azerbaijan was granted autonomy. Resolutions of the Caucasian Bureau dated on July 4th and 5th, 1921. The meeting of the Caucasian Bureau took place in Tiflis regarding this issue. Because of its special importance, we submit the translation of extracts from the minutes of the meeting of the Caucasian Bureau dated on July 4th evening and July 5th. First plenum of the Caucasian Party Central Committee meeting, July 5, 1921. Members of the Caucasian Bureau. It was decided, taking into account the urgency of national peace between Muslims and Armenians and the rather extensive economic relations of Upper and Lower Garabagh with Azerbaijan, to maintain Garabagh within the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic and to grant it with extensive district autonomy Shusha city as an administrative center within the autonomous oblast. Voting in favor 4, abstained 3. To charge the Azerbaijan Central Committee with the task of defining the autonomous oblast's borders with the condition of submitting it further to confirmation of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau. To require the Presidium of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau to conduct negotiations with the Azerbaijan and Armenian Central Committee regarding the nominee to the Garabagh Extraordinary Committee. Azerbaijan Central Committee to define the scale of autonomy of Garabagh and submitted for the confirmation of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau. Secretary of the Caucasian Bureau of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee. But in fact, the meetings of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee Caucasian Bureau on July 4th and 5th don't confirm the existence of facts regarding the pressure by Stalin on the decision adopted. As of the resolution of Lenin's idea of socialist state of the federative system by Stalin, who acted with this plan of autonomization as regal of the eve of the establishment of the USSR, December 30, 1922, seems absurd. Therefore, the issue must be considered in a deeper and more global way. The center of in the name of Caucasian Bureau acted the beneficiary side in settlement of border issue when before the creation of USSR and before Armenia and Azerbaijan became the members of the USSR. The issue of Garabagh became an issue that needed to be discussed trilaterally. Caucasian Bureau used this right and didn't give a chance to the natural and historical realization of the article on self-determination declared by Azerbaijan Garabagh and expressed it as if extensive district autonomy. The Caucasian Bureau wanted to put pressure upon Azerbaijan that Garabagh can be given to Armenia. The next day, by coming back to this issue with the aim of pressing Armenia that maintenance of Garabagh within Azerbaijan can be confirmed and provide favorable position for the center that's granting autonomy to Garabagh and achieved it. Thus, following the resolution of the Caucasian Bureau plenum dated on July 5th, the events related to Garabagh turned in a new direction. The Caucasian Bureau provided a favorable decision for the center and began to apply pressure for its realization. Thus, Azerbaijan and SSR confronted the new conditions due to the forced granting of autonomy to its integral part, Garabagh. Armenia tried to deteriorate the relations between Caucasian Bureau and Azerbaijan in connection with the Garabagh issue and to realize its claims for Garabagh through its opportunities to intervene in the affairs of Garabagh as a result of granting autonomy to it. These issues should be considered in a detailed forum. Change in Kirov's position. Following the adoption of the resolution dated on July 5th, Azerbaijan leadership had started its implementation. In regard to this, meeting of the Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee Presidium dated on July 19th approved the results of Nermanov's fleece visit, and the meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Political Bureau and Organization Bureau dated on July 20th, and the committee was set up to prepare a constitution for the autonomous oblast. Here there is state, military and social political figures from Garabagh. Here there is need to clarify one issue. As is already known, the resolution dated July 5th gave a decisive role to the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee in granting autonomy to Garabagh. Evidently, this factor played important roles also in that Kirov was brought to the leadership of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee in July 1921. Directly after Kirov's coming to power in Azerbaijan, the official attitude towards granting autonomy to Garabagh changed, and this process was delayed for about 2 years. Therefore, Kirov's position around this issue and the factors affecting it must be analyzed specifically. If we look at the extract form of the minutes of the meeting of July 4th, we see that at that time Kirov was against the maintenance of the mountainous parts of Garabagh within Azerbaijan and voted for its annexation to Armenia. Kirov also took part in the meetings of the Azerbaijan Central Committee Executive Committee Presidium in July 19th and the meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Political Bureau and Organization Bureau in July 20th, as well as in the adoption of the mentioned decisions. At the meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Political Bureau and Organization Bureau taking place with the direct chairmanship of Kirov, we see that this position has changed completely. 7 out of the 9 persons, Kirov, Nermanov, Akhundov, Garayev, Afandiev, Stukalov, Mirzayan, Bunyadzadeh and Husseinov, taking part in the meeting, decided to ask the Caucasian Bureau to reconsider the decision on the separation of Garabagh. Only 2 of them, Nermanov and Bunyadzad, supported the realization of the decision of the Caucasian Bureau in the shortest time. A committee was established to gather materials on this issue. Bunyadzadeh, who was heading the conference of responsible workers of Garabagh taking place in October 21, attended by members of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Organization Bureau, also supported Kirov's position. That is, separation of Garabagh as an autonomous oblast was not considered appropriate as shown as a special note at that meeting. Thus, it appears that new attitude towards autonomy of Garabagh emerged through Kirov's leadership. This was not accidental. Kirov had become sure that not only his position but also the decision of the Caucasian Bureau in granting forced autonomy to Garabagh instead of confirming it as an integral part of Azerbaijan, as well as the necessity of the realization of this decision quickly was wrong. Even 4 months after the decree granting autonomy to Garabagh, the meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Presidium, which took place on October 8, 1923, with Kirov's chairmanship, admitted that the propaganda of the decision of granting autonomy to Garabagh among the population, particularly among Turks, was not finished. How was Azerbaijan made to accept the decision of granting autonomy to Garabagh? This course of events caused an anxiety within the Caucasian Bureau, and there began pressures to make Azerbaijan accept the decision dated on July 5th. This was carried out in 2 ways. On the one hand, a requirement was put before the Azerbaijan leadership. On the other hand, the leadership of Garabagh was threatened with Armenian cadres sent here special, and efforts were made to weaken Azerbaijan's influence in that region. The autonomization of Garabagh was taking place in parallel with the process of the creation of the Transcaucasian Federation and the USSR. Despite this, the problems concerning its realization was not reconsidered in the way suggested by the Azerbaijan Communist Party. On the contrary, in February 1922, at the first Congress of the Transcaucasian Communist Organizations, the Russian Communist Party Transcaucasian State Committee, with Ordzhonikidze elected as the chairman, used the administrative power methods in implementation of the decision date on July 5th as the done in its adoption. The meeting of the Transcaucasian State Committee dated on October 27, 1922 suggested to the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee to implement the decision dated on July 5th, and it decided to appoint Karakazov as the chairman of the executive committee and to send Shadons for an official visit to the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee for the purpose of appointing him to a responsible position. The meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee on December 15th adopted the decision of the Transcaucasian State Committee for execution and the Central Committee Kirov, Mirzabekan and Karakazov for Garabagh affairs, as well as setting up a committee December 15, 1922, July 24, 1923, consisting of 7 persons at the Azerbaijan SSR Sovnarkom. Despite all these actions, the pressure on Azerbaijan went on. On December 22, the Union Soviet of the Transcaucasian Federation adopted a special decision on rapidly granting autonomy to Garabagh. Following the creation of the USSR, the requirements of the Transcaucasian State Committee became even stricter. In May 1923, the report of the Garabagh was included in the agenda of the plenum of the Transcaucasian State Committee. On June 1st, the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Presidium made a decision on decreeing of autonomy to the Garabagh and the submission of its draft to the Central Committee within 3 days. This decision satisfied the Caucasian State Committee. On June 27, based on Shadun's and Karakazov's report, the plenum of the Caucasian State Committee advised the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee to provide the grant of autonomy to Garabagh within a month. Only July 1st, a meeting of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Presidium headed by Kirov listened to the issue on Garabagh and adopted the decision consisting of 6 provisions. It was suggested to the Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee to grant autonomy to Garabagh and create the autonomous Garabagh Oblast, with Khankandi at the center. Committee Garayev chairman, members Karakazov, Sevridov, Ildirim, and Bunyadzadeh was set up to determine issues connected with borders. On July 4th, the Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee of the Soviet also adopted a decision of the same content. The Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee of the Soviets issued a decree on the creation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast with signature of Gasumov 1879 and 1949 and MAHMUDOV 1893 and 1937 on July 7th. The decree consists of the preamble for provisions and the conclusion on the establishment of a joint committee. As can be seen, there is a difference between the decision of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee and the name of the decree, because instead of separating the low and the mountainous parts of Garabagh, it was decided to separate only Garabagh. The fact that the decree was named the Autonomous Garabagh Oblast attracted attention. However, afterwards was named Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. We have to follow this tradition as well as in order not to cause confusion, but we accept it in the meaning part marked in the first official document. The decree differs rather from its primitive content instead of the serious legal document. Historical chronology is breaking, the preamble facts are distorted, and the necessity of granting autonomy to Garabagh is not sufficiently grounded. There is a legal political around the first provision of the decree. To create an autonomous oblast from the Armenian parts of Garabagh as a constituent part of the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic, with Khankandi as the center. Instead of confirming that Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was created out of Azerbaijan lands and is an integral part of Azerbaijan, they used expression that could be interpreted differently. The third provision states the creation of a temporary revolutionary committee before the morning of the Soviet Congress. This undoubtedly provided the Armenian leadership of the oblast with wider rights, etc. Shusha city was included to the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast by the decision of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee Presidium dated on 16th, 10 days after the decree. The regulations of 1923 of the Gubernian Executive Committee for Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was adopted and applied. The regulation Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was published on November 26, 1924. Thus, an integral part of Azerbaijan, Garabagh was artificially divided into plain and mountainous parts, and Azerbaijan leadership was forced to provide the status of autonomy to the Armenians that settled later in the mountainous part of Garabagh. In addition, this was made without taking into account the opinion of Azerbaijans living in the territory in Garabagh, and thus evidently violated their rights. Garabagh formula for Armenia. Garabagh formula for Armenia. Armenia's position and the maintenance of Garabagh within Azerbaijan its autonomization also causes interest. First, Armenia didn't want to agree to such a settlement of the issue. On July 16, 1921, the Armenian Communist Party Central Committee stated that the decision of the Caucasian Bureau dated on July 5th didn't meet its demand and began to continue the claims for Garabagh. However, later it began to coordinate its position with the granting of autonomy to Garabagh presented as a gift by the Caucasian Bureau, and a struggle for Garabagh was given such a formula. First, towards withdrawing Garabagh from under the leadership of Azerbaijan following the grant of autonomy to it, then towards annexation of Garabagh to Armenia. The base of this formula involved strengthening Armenian chauvinism in Garabagh and its surroundings. The process reached such a point that Rajak spoke about Armenian chauvinism in April 23 in Azerbaijan at the 12th Congress, April 17-25, 1923 of the Russian Communist Party Central Committee. Stalin protested against these words. The Armenian answer usually fails to reconcile with Stalin while speaking about the decision of the Caucasian Bureau dated on July 5th, cites these words here extensively. This the same party Congress relating letter to the Congress was read, and it contained Stalin's subjective characteristics. The repression of the members of the Central Committee elected at the 12th Congress is also a known fact. Therefore, the issue linked with Radek's speech must be reanalyzed. Armenians, having strong support in the person of Stalin, disclosed their real intentions. On June 13th, Shadun's wrote to the Caucasian State Committee that this autonomous oblast Garabagh must be related directly to the Transcaucasian State Committee, saying heads of the Transcaucasian Federation didn't accept such an alternative and a wiser settlement of the problem. He confirmed very clearly the above-mentioned words about the main formula of Armenia's further activity regarding Garabagh. The granting of autonomy to the integral part of Azerbaijan, the mountainous part of Garabagh, and attitude toward the issue arising around was concluded at the 6th Congress of Azerbaijan Communist Party by Kirov, May 5, 1924. His doubt and uncertainty about granting autonomy to Garabagh is felt in every single sentence. He said that at that Congress, we solved this issue finally, and certainly we did the very right thing. There is basically no doubt that we will not come back to solve this issue again. In fact, as mentioned above, Kirov had doubt concerning the correct settlement of this issue, and this was a completely grounded doubt. Accusation of the Zengez region of Azerbaijan by Armenian separation of Nakhchivan from other territories in Azerbaijan. Accusation of the Zengez region of Azerbaijan by Armenian separation of Nakhchivan from other territories in Azerbaijan. As is clear from the above mentioned, the government of Azerbaijan People's Republic adhered to the traditions of historical geographic territorial division of Azerbaijan has united Shusha, Jovanshir, Jabral and Zengez regions to the Garabagh Governor-General Administration and regarding this region as an indivisible administrative territory. The government of Azerbaijan USSR also demanded that Armenia remove its troops from Zengez and Garabagh with a governmental ultimatum dated April 30, 1920. However, later in the Soviet times, some purposes were taken as the basis and began to create the idea of separation of Zengez from Garabagh. This was aimed at increasing pressure on Azerbaijan and the settlement of those land destiny. A further course of events showed that the position regarding Zengez changed when Soviet power established Armenia in November 29, 1920. The telegram of Azerbaijan Revolutionary Committee to the Armenian Soviet Republic dated on November 13, that statement dated November 1st, dealt as with the annexation of Zengez to Armenia, but for some reasons 3.637 verse territory of Zengez region had been given to Armenia. This, in fact, is still what the heavens below. Act of great hostility to the Republic of Azerbaijan because that part of land had been annexed to the Republic of Armenia, which broke off communication between Nakhchivan and other territories of Azerbaijan USSR. Nakhchivan separated from Azerbaijan. On the other hand, this foretelled much regarding Armenia's further insidious intentions toward Nakhchivan. Changes in administrative division of their territories of Garabagh. Changes in administrative division of their territories of Garabagh. Due to the purposeful process attained in 1920-1923, Azerbaijan territories included within former Garabagh Khanate lost their traditional historical geographic unity or integrity. The country's territory was divided into 15 years in the list of settlements published based on the materials of Azerbaijan agriculture census 1930 and 1921. They indicate that Jabrail, Javanshir, Gbadli, and Shusha Yazds were included in the Garabagh territory. As can be noted, the territories of other Yazds remained within their former borders of the time being. As a result of the creation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, some settlements of Javanshir, Shusha, and Gbadli Yazd were separated from the traditional administrative division and annexed to it. This caused the requirement of introducing a new administrative division. This issue was discussed at the meeting of the committee preparing the regulations of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. The following decision was made on the third issue concerning the forming governance of Lowland Garabagh in its administrative division. Create Lowland Garabagh Oblast Executive Committee consisting of the lowland parts of the Javanshir Yazd, Shusha, Gbadli, and Garabagh Yazd to apply the regulation of the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic on 1923 governing executive committees. To charge the Special Committee at the Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee with dividing of the Lowland Garabagh district into regions. As can be seen from here, in the period when the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was created, there was an idea of uniting Lowland Garabagh as well as a special administrative territorial union. However, after some time, this idea changed. In accordance with it, the order of the Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee dated on August 6, 1923, signed by the chairman of Azerbaijan Central Executive Committee Kasumov, deputy chairman of Sovnari Kamguliev, and minister of Internal Affairs Severidov. Following the creation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, the Aghdam Jabrail Kurdistan Yazds were created from the remaining part of Garabagh. Pursuant to that document, even the structure, centers, chairman of Yazd executive committees of Aghdam, Jabrail, Kurdistan Yazd, and other issues were determined, and the Gbadli Yazd was annulled. Taking into account these and other administrative territorial divisions carried out in the Azerbaijan SSR, the Azerbaijan Central Statistical Office conducted calculations on the area and national composition of the population, etc. of their territories based on the materials of the 1921 agriculture census. In accordance with these calculations from the historical territory of Garabagh within Azerbaijan SSR remained totally 15,989.96 km territory, including the territory of the Garabagh Autonomous Republic. Some parts of the historical territories of Garabagh were taken out of Azerbaijan and given to Armenia. In the course of further administrative territorial divisions, Zengilan, Gbadli, and Lachum were created in the territory of the Tengiz areas remaining within Azerbaijan SSR. Aghdam, Bardakh, Jabadid, Tartar, and Jabrail regions were created in the territory of Aghdam and Jabrail Yazds. Thus, a part of the territory of Garabagh Khanate having a specific place in the history of Azerbaijan statehood was given to Armenia in the Soviet period, and the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was created with a mountainous part remaining was Azerbaijan. Garabagh 1920-1980. Garabagh 1920-1980. So far, due attention has not been paid to the most important events of the history of administrative territorial division of the Garabagh territory while speaking about its autonomization. Analysis shows that the territory of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast is formed not on the basis of scientific geographic principles reflecting real history, but not on the basis of a voluntary approach aimed at specific purposes. That is, it was organized through uniting the local territories where Armenian settlements were prevailing and renamed autonomous units. It's clear that based on this principle, Armenians can demand the autonomy in the territories of other countries where they have a large dense population. The events reached such a point that the Aghdaban village of Kalbajar and Bukhari Veysel village of Fuul remained within the borders of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, but the administrative control was changed. In accordance with the decision of the committee preparing the regulations of the Garabagh Autonomy, more than 170 settlements were included within the oblast. Information of the Azerbaijan Central Statistical Office in 1924 indicates that the number of such settlements were more than 200. An Armenian named Gocharyan states that the number of these settlements was 250 in this booklet published in 1925. These facts prove that the territory of Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was extending, contradicting official documents, and the number of its population as well as ethnic composition was changed to the benefit of Armenians due to new settlements. Following the creation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, the settlements included in it were divided and administratively based on the region Volost village states as follows. The Zag region. This region included 5 Volosts: Hadrut, Tuch, Hozabyurt, Arakul and Edili, and 48 villages. Varenda region. The region consists of 4 Volosts: Dagavert, Sus, Charts, Norashen, and 46 villages. Shusha region. This region consists of Shusha city and Malabelu Volost, 12 villages. Khychun region. This region was comprised of 4 Volosts: Dashbulakh, Askaran, Krasnoselsk, and Galadarası, and 53 villages. Cherabert region. It consists of 4 Volosts: Margshavan, Oratak, Dovshanli, and Atya, and 53 villages. A change took place in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast during the implementation of the new administrative territorial division. In August 1930, the territory of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was divided again into 5 regions: Jarabert, Martuni, Stepanakert, Dizak, and Shusha. As can be seen, Varender is named Martuni. The territory of Khychun is included Stepanakert. In August 17, 1939, Jarabert was named Mardikert and Dizak Hadru. But this was not the last change made in the administrative territorial division of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast as well. In the early 1960s, during the implementation of the policy of expanding regions, the main blow struck Shusha, where overwhelming majority of population was Azerbaijanis. On January 4th, 1963, the region of Shusha was annulled and its territory was given to that of the Stepanakert region. However, in late 1980s, Armenian ideologists and their supporters aiming at separating the Garabagh from Azerbaijan began to deny this. Nevertheless, facts are facts. The achievements on the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast within Azerbaijan were reflected in the statistical journals published by the Oblast Statistical Office in Stepanakert. Further, the very Stepanakert tried to close its eyes to these editions, while there is a great need for not closing one's eyes to them, but approaching them more attentively. One of the statistical journals wrote about the situation in the cultural, economic, public health, and other fields during the 40 years after the creation of autonomous oblasts. Before the revolution, there were no secondary industrial educational institutions, public libraries, and theaters in Garabagh. There were only 3 special cultural and educational institutions and 1 special cinema in the city of Shusha. Presently, there are 5 special secondary educational institutions in Garabagh Autonomous Oblast with 1,000 pupils, 164 libraries having the book stock of more than 930,000 copies separate here. 150 of the public libraries are in villages. The book fund reaches 330,000 copies. There is the Armenian State Dramatic Theatre named after Gorky, a state song and dance assembled in the Stepanakert city. There are 176 club establishments in the oblast. Garabagh has also research institutions. The newspaper Saveta Khan Garabagh has been published in native language, Armenian language, Then the first day of the establishment of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. While speaking about agriculture, the fact that Garabagh has changed from the land of wooden plows into that of tractor and combines confirmed. It pointed out that at the beginning of 1963 there were 1.4 thousand tractors, 224 combines, 670 lorries, and thousands of other modern agricultural machines in the Garabagh agriculture. Much was done for the realization of the industrial potential of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast during the 40 years. Gross product of the entire industry in 1962 grew by 341%, electric power by 945%, and so on compared to 1940. The oblast's socio-economic life developed dynamically as well after the mid-1960s. Comparison of the economic and social development rates generally of the Azerbaijani SSR, including Nakhchivan Soviet Socialist Republic and Garabagh Autonomous Oblast of 1964-1987 shows very clearly the autonomous oblast's high progress rate at the time. In 1987, the number of industrial workers in every 10,000 persons was 686 in the Republic and 387 in Nakhchivan Soviet Socialist Republic, while this figure equaled 657 in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast.
Gross agricultural product per capita equaled accordingly 588.501 and 692, etc. As to the social progress rate, these figures were much higher than the figures not only in Azerbaijan SSR, but even the Armenian SSR, and in general in the URSSR, while the hospital bed supply of our 10,000 persons was 86.2 in the Armenian SSR, 97.9 in Azerbaijan SSR. This figure was 101.7 in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. Even the preamble of the resolution of the Soviet Union Communist Party Central Committee and USSR Council of Ministers dated on March 24, 1988, on the socio-economic development of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, which was adapted to the social efforts of Armenian separatists, these Moscow supporters pointed out particularly the achievements gained in the oblast's social-economic development fields. And in a period when false information wanted by the separatists no limitations. Azerbaijan did not fear to put the fact that the socio-economic state of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, which as an integral part of it to extensive public discussion. On the contrary, it was interested in more elucidation of the current situation. Therefore, in the spring March days of 1988, a round table on the theme of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast economic problems and visions was organized at the Institute of Economic Management at the Azerbaijan SSR Council of Ministers, and its materials were published and delivered to the public. Therefore, we don't think there is a need to state those facts here. We just want to draw attention to the speech of the chairman of the Academic Council on the problem of main assets, capital investment, economic efficiency of new technique, academician of the USSR Academy of Science, Armenian by nationality, SHUKUROV. At the end of the discussion during that round table, he confirmed the real situation and said, "It was very pleasant for me to conduct an exchange of opinions with my colleagues on the issues concerning even more development of the productive forces of Garabagh. I should confess that I didn't have sufficient full information on this issue, and our conversation gave me a chance to fill this gap to some extent." As it is said, this economist academician SHUKUROV confesses that he doesn't have enough information about such an important issue. In this case, as the need to speak about others. In fact, Armenian separatists needed not the information reflecting the real situation. On the contrary, a lack of information was needed in the fight for breaking the Garabagh from Azerbaijan. Following the granting of autonomy to the integral part of Azerbaijan, the Garabagh Armenians in Garabagh, Armenia and the Brat did not stop their separatist activity. And the period of silence of Armenian politicians, Armenian writers, poets, as well as men representing other classes became carriers of the strategic goal, or rather the politicians forced them ahead. Famous Armenian writer Shaginian published a booklet titled Garabagh shortly after the granting of autonomy to Garabagh. This booklet distorted the historical truth of, gave false information to the all-Union reader. Garabagh was a feudal district, noble piece of Armenia, failing to achieve what they wanted in the 1920s and 30s. Armenians reactivated again following the war of 1941-1945. Armenians, mainly from Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, make up 20.5% of the students of all higher education institutions and technical schools of Azerbaijan SSR. There are many comrades from Garabagh among the Republic's party, Soviet and agricultural leaders, secretaries of Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee, Deputy People Commissariat, etc. Nevertheless, we don't object the annexation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast to Armenian SSR, but we don't agree that Tusha region populated mainly by Azerbaijan as well as presently, that it's part of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast be given to the Armenian SSR. Since the day Shusha city was built, it hasn't only been the administrative, political and cultural center of Garabagh, but also played an exceptional role in the struggle of Azerbaijani people against Iranian invaders for its independence. One of the most bloodthirsty conquerors, butcher of the Caucasian people, MAHMUDOV, was killed in Shusha. The rich music culture of the Azerbaijani people has been formed in this city. The names of Ibrahim Khan, Yagub, Natvan, and other distinguished political and cultural figures are linked with this city. At the same time, we regard it urgent to take into consideration of all Union Communist
Party Central Committee that during the consideration of the issue of annexing the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast to Armenia SSR, the issue of annexing Azerbaijan within Garabagh regions of Armenia SSR adjoining the Azerbaijan Republic and populated mainly by Azerbaijanis and Azerbaijanis SSR. Taking into account the very big cultural and economic lack to development of these regions, their annexation to Azerbaijan would create an opportunity to improve the financial welfare standards of the population and cultural political service to it. We ask that all Union Communist Party Central Committee to consider as well the following issues in addition to the above mentioned. Judge and comrades raised the issue of giving Balkans, the Katal and Gar regions of Azerbaijan SSR to Georgian SSR. Despite the fact that the total number of population in the mentioned regions is 79,000 while Georgian Ingos make up only 9,000 of it, we don't protest against consideration of this issue, but the issue of annexation of Bartul region of Georgian SSR adjoining directly to Azerbaijan SSR and populated exclusively by Azerbaijanis only to the Azerbaijan SSR must be considered simultaneously with this issue. Finally, we ask you to consider the issue of annexing Derbent and Qasem Khan regions of Dagestan SSR, which were a part of Baku gubernia within Azerbaijan in the past and presently joined Azerbaijan SSR. Those regions are populated mainly by Azerbaijanis. In addition, more than half of the population engaged in cattle breeding spend 9 months of the year in the territory of Azerbaijan. We regard it expedient to establish a committee of the All Union Communist Party Central Committee to include interested representatives from all the republics. Secretary of the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee, Baghur of December 10, 1945, Baku City. This reply drew the attention of many researchers and certain views were expressed concerning it. However, there is a need to come back to it once again. What are the issues drawing attention in this document? First of all, such prompt answer to a very complex issue of Malenkov's suggestions and the condition of the Dem Party bureaucracy attracts attention. It showed that such a suggestion was not unexpected for the Azerbaijan Communist Party Central Committee. Political, scientific, historical as well as contextual analysis of the text are also a necessity. Let us not stay too much on this and pay attention to one important moment. It appears from here that, despite being sometimes claimed, Azerbaijan leadership never evaded such a problem. On the contrary, it was ready to discuss it and put forward definite suggestions at the highest level. Such a substantiated position made Moscow avoid pressing Azerbaijan. Nevertheless, Armenian leadership didn't step back from its intention and managed massive deportation of Azerbaijanis from the Armenian SSR, their ancestral land from 1948 to 1953. Further, Armenians didn't stop their separatist activity linked with Garabagh even after that. They raised this problem again in the condition of an aggravated anti-Turkey campaign in the USSR in the 1960s. In 1965, the petition of the annexation of Garabagh to Armenia signed by 45,000 persons was submitted to Moscow, and based on this, the Secretariat of the Soviet Union Communist Party Central Committee charged Armenia and Azerbaijan with preparing an issue regarding this. Armenian separatists think that Suslov, Secretary of the Soviet Union Communist Party Central Committee, prevented this. With Aliyev's coming to Azerbaijan leadership in 1969 and due to his courageous and determined position, separatist initiatives of Armenians and the activity they ran in Moscow with this purpose didn't yield any result for a long time. During the adaptation of the USSR condition in 1977, Armenians again tried to raise this problem with the same persistency. However, this time they also failed to achieve anything. During the period Aliyev headed Azerbaijan 1969-1982 and was one of the USSR leaders 1982-1987, his determination and strong will didn't allow Armenian separatists to achieve their intentions. The publishing of Zorib Alliance of Yagub in Yerevan in 1984 with these purposeful distortions concerning history in modern time of Garabagh, nationally separatist appeals incited positions again. This would gain great support in the Soviet leadership by way of glasnost and perestroika, and declared by the Gorbachev, surrounded by Armenian nationalists, and it entered a new stage. Garabagh, governed by the Armenian separatists and terrorists, supported by Moscow, took the path of betrayal against Azerbaijan, as done before during Azerbaijan People's Republic in 1920. General Review of Development of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast and Lowland, part of Garabagh. General Review of Development of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast and Lowland, part of Garabagh. In all the previous historical periods, Garabagh was an indivisible natural geographic region of Azerbaijan, and it supplemented Azerbaijan as a historical district with its economic and political development, similar traditions, lifestyle, and social conditions. However, autonomization of the Garabagh caused radical change in the situation. The Garabagh Autonomous Oblast began to turn into an agrarian industrial region, and the exceptional conditions created for it, with the plain as well as other regions of Garabagh populated by Azerbaijanis, becoming its raw material base. The regions around the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast were mainly directed to engage in cotton growing, and a processing industry began to decline. All of these led to a quick improvement in the living conditions in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast compared with other regions of Garabagh. The location of house resort centers in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast also caused the flow of lowland population in the summer, which developed the economy of Garabagh even more. This led to the entry of a huge amount of income to the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast budget. The only higher education institution of the entire region, Teacher Training Institute, was also situated in Khonkandi, the center of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. Economic advantage gained by the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, unlike the other historical Garabagh regions, was accompanied as well by an increase of political advantage of the Autonomous Oblast status. Lowland regions inhabited by Muslim Azerbaijanis suffered the pressure of the Soviet regime and discrimination more than the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, inhabited mainly by Christian Armenians. All of these increased the ethnic selfishness of Garabagh Armenians supported by Moscow and Armenia SSR, and created an openly humiliating atmosphere against Azerbaijanis. Thus, like in 1904, 1906, and 1918, 1920, Armenians governed from special centers were organized in a much better way. Armenians were secretly and quickly armed. These factors, as well as other conditions, later become decisive factors in the occupation of other regions around Garabagh Autonomous Oblast by the Armenian military forces and Garabagh by the Armenian separatist terrorists. The invasive war by Armenian separatists from Armenia and Garabagh to break off Garabagh from Azerbaijan, beginning 1985-1991. The invasive war by Armenian separatists from Armenia and Garabagh to break off Garabagh from Azerbaijan, beginning 1985-1991. The claims of Armenians for Azerbaijan land, as well as Garabagh, are an integral part of their strategic plan aimed at the creation of the Greater Armenia. Therefore, adhering to their traditions, Armenians began to struggle for the realization of this plan as soon as favorable conditions emerged. In 1985, the pro-Armenian Gorbachev came to power in the USSR, and this caused by the reactivation of Armenian separatists. This time, the support and protection of the armed Armenian separatist terrorists by the Soviet leadership quickly became evident. In order to implement the secret plan leaked with the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, Gorbachev first removed Hydrologic, the mightiest obstacle in this way, from the political bureau. Shortly after that, in November 1987, an Armenian academician included in Gorbachev's team, Agam, stated in Paris that he had submitted a suggestion to the Soviet leadership concerning Garabagh and hoped for a settlement of these problems through perestroika and democracy. The Armenian Garabagh Committee, which operated secretly before street separatist terrorist organization Krong and the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, but now began to operate openly, and the MAHMUDOV movement was formed. This movement relied on Armenia, the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, Moscow leadership, USSR, and some Armenians all around the world. The event carried an even more aggressive character beginning in February 1988. February, a wave of meetings of the separatist and Armenian nationalists began to agitate in Yerevan and Khankendi. On February 20, a session of the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast Soviet addressed Azerbaijan SSR Supreme Soviet to consider the oblast status. This fact showed that Armenians had changed their tactics compared to November 1945. They managed to create a false idea in the world community about Del Garabagh in the period after the Second World War due to intensive propaganda they ran after, and with the help of the strong Armenian diaspora in foreign countries. Therefore, this time they followed the tactics of making their claims from behind closed doors to public squares. The then political leadership of Azerbaijan and its vast community were unprepared for the new tactics of Armenian separatists and their protectors. The matter of two Azerbaijani youths in the Asgaron region by Armenian separatists as terrorists on February 24 in the wounding of 90 men didn't lead to the preparation of a deliberate political response of the plans of Armenian either. On the late February, matters planned with the participation of special Armenian terrorist bodies and our national security authorities were committed in Sumgayit, a big industrial city in Azerbaijan. Soon thereafter, the purpose of Sumgayit events became clear. As was planned before in this war, this event was instantly used against Azerbaijanis living in Armenia and for breaking the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast off from Azerbaijan SSR. On March 10, 4 residents of the MAHMUDOV village of Azerbaijan is located off to the south of Yerevan were murdered. On March 25, more than 100 houses in the Azerbaijan villages of the Ararat region were plundered and burned, and the population was driven out. In mid-May, a new attack was made on Azerbaijan villages near Yerevan. The Armenian atrocities and genocide committed repeatedly against Azerbaijanis during history started more fiercely again. In this period, when atrocities committed by the separatist terrorist Armenians knew no restrictions, the fact that the Soviet Union, Communist Party, Central Committee and Soviet government were not interested in a real assessment of the situation became evident. The resolution on measures for an acceleration of socio-economic development of the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast of Azerbaijan SSR in 1988, 1991, 1995, dated on March 24, 1988, was intentionally directed to covering up the fact that the issue was in essence and an act of separatism. Such support encouraged Armenians even more and increased aggressiveness. The Azerbaijan leadership headed by Vaziri demonstrated submission to Moscow and took the position of concession to the aggressor. Finally, Moscow took one more step in the direction of removing the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast from within Azerbaijan SSR. The SSR Supreme Soviet Presidium adopted a decision on application of Special Administration Forum and the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast of Azerbaijan SSR on January 12, 1989. Everything was clear. The Special Administration Committee created in the Del Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was to provide separation of the Autonomous Oblast from Azerbaijan and its annexation to Armenia. However, due to the democratic struggle of Azerbaijan people understanding this, the Special Administration Committee was annulled on November 28. Nevertheless, a new organization committee was established in its place. The Armenian SSR made use of this situation and adopted an unconstitutional act on the annexation of Del Garabagh to Armenia on December 1st. This was an open legal intervention of Armenia to the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan SSR. It was expected to close its eyes to this intervention as well. Thus the situation deteriorated even more. This time the SSR leadership headed by Gorbachev committed an even more terrible crime against Azerbaijan. Baku was chosen as the main target. The Soviet state broke its constitutional responsibility to its citizens and brought a large troop contingent armed with the most modern techniques and weapons into Baku and committed a bloody slaughter here in the night of January 1920, 1999. Armenian soldiers and officers were widely used in the Baku bloodshed. However, the bloodshed of January 20 failed to break the will of the Azerbaijani people. On the contrary, it agitated the struggle for the independence and territorial integrity of the republic. The next day after the tragedy of January 20, Hydrologic Culture to Azerbaijan representation in Moscow resolutely denounced criminal actions of the Soviet leadership and ascended to the front of the just struggle by the Azerbaijani people. On August 3, 1991, Azerbaijan SSR Supreme Soviet adopted a statement on the restoration of its state independence. In October 18, the Constitutional Act on State Independence was adopted. Armenian separatists of Garabagh also used the emerging station and continued to become political organs. In September 1991, they announced the establishment of a fictitious state named Garabagh Republic. The Azerbaijan Republic refused to recognize that unit, and on November 26, the status of Garabagh Autonomous Oblast was annulled. In the late 1991, the collapse of the USSR created a new geopolitical condition in the post-Soviet territories. Armenia actually started an open and just war against Azerbaijan. Armenian military units violated the Azerbaijan borders and penetrated in the Garabagh. Joined Armenian separatist terrorists began the occupation of Azerbaijan territories. Act of betrayal upon the sovereignty of Azerbaijan, non-declared war of Armenia against Azerbaijan Republic, occupation of Garabagh. Act of betrayal upon the sovereignty of Azerbaijan, non-declared war of Armenia against Azerbaijan Republic, occupation of Garabagh. Following the February events of 1988, the separatist terrorist groups of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast and Armenian armed forces began military operations for the capture of Garabagh. The units of the USSR armed forces and Armenia and Garabagh Autonomous Oblast also joined them. Clearly, Russian military forces couldn't take the step without the agreement of Moscow. Thus, a condition emerged similar to the one due to the collapse of the Tsar government in February 1917 and repeated once again. Many officers serving the Soviet Army and former Soviet military units united against Azerbaijan and began military operations on a common front. First began the occupation of Garabagh Azerbaijan settlements. Karagijahan was invaded on January 15. Malubeli and Kushtular villages on February 10, 1992. The peaceful and unarmed people were ruthlessly tortured, and the siege press of Khojaly and Shushan narrowed. The Dashaut operation against hurried lot of Azerbaijani volunteers failed. Armenian and Soviet military units captured Garabagh village in mid-February. The most tragic event of modern history took place on the night of February 25, 26, 1992. Armenian military units committed a terrible genocide against Azerbaijanis and Khojaly together with the soldiers of the 366th Mounted Infantry Regiment. Other than the terrible bloodshed committed by fascism in the Second World War, it is the most massive and terrible genocide committed by the Armenian separatists, terrorists, and Armenian military forces against humanity in modern time. The Azerbaijan leadership backed the position of Moscow instead of its own nation, and this war targeted against the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan and its people discredited. Due to the condition of an aggravated people movement on March 1992, Mutalibov heading the Republic resigned. The power gap that emerged weakens the protective ability of the Azerbaijan Republic even more. Consequently, in May 1992, Armenian and Soviet military units captured Shusha as well. Thus, the Armenians actually invaded the entire territory of Garabagh. The next day was the occupation of the Lachian region. Armenians didn't stop military operation after the occupation of the entire territory of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast and Lachian region. Making use of the aggravation of the fight for power in Baku, the Armenians invaded Lachian as well. The new squabbles within the power during the rule of Azerbaijan People's Front struck a heavy blow on the Republic's defense. In April 1993, Kalbajar was invaded. In June, a deep political crisis occurred in Azerbaijan. Hydrologic came to power by the demand of the people. Armenia continued the war against Azerbaijan, invaded Aghdam, Fizuli, Jabrayil, Gubadlu, and Dangilan regions within July-October 1993. Armenians razed the land to the ground in the invaded territories. 20,000 Azerbaijanis became martyrs in the war. Hundreds of thousands were wounded. 50,000 men became invalid. The number of refugees and internally displaced persons exceeded 1 million. In accordance with official information, Armenian invaders took 40 points in 161 Azerbaijanis, including 314 women, 58 children, and 255 old men, as captives and hostages. Armenian fascists hid true number of captives and hostages from international organizations, treat them in inhuman and ruthless ways, make them work as slaves, humiliate and defend them. The United Nations organization confirmed that an unfair war is run against Azerbaijan, its territorial integrity is violated, and its territories have been invaded by Armenians. United Nations Security Council adopted 4 resolutions on the withdrawal of Armenian armed forces from the territories of the Republic of Azerbaijan. However, the Armenian invaders didn't implement these resolutions. There was a great need for the mobilization of military, economic, as well as human forces of Azerbaijan in the struggle against the Armenian invaders. With this purpose, he relieved the rest people by television and radio in November 2. A series of military organizational measures were taken. Due to this, it was possible to create a turning point in the just struggle of the Azerbaijani people against the invaders. In mid-November, the attack of Armenian armed forces against Belgaum was stopped. On January 5, 1994, the Hardest town and 22 villages of the Fuul region were cleared away from the enemy. After that, a part of the Garabagh region puzzled Tagagaya Babashlar Khan Chaplı, Susuzluq, Kasım Binası, Yanşar Binar, Yanşak, Bağırsak, Gamışlı and Bağırlı settlements of Kalbaja region were liberated as well. The enemy was driven out from Chichakli mountain and other strategic hills. The part of Kalbaja region right of the town was taken under control. The successes achieved by Azerbaijan in the field were creating a turning point in the war and releasing the occupied native land seriously alarmed not only the Armenian but also the forces supporting it. The Armenian party's policy of strengthening the Republic of Armenia militarily, supplying it with modern weapons and making it a reactionary force in the region was aggravated ever more. In such condition that the Azerbaijan Republic signed the Bishkek Protocol in May 8, 1994. Successful military operations of Azerbaijan and Armenian military forces caused the keys for in the front in May 12. In the period of this invasion and war against the Republic of Azerbaijan, Armenia pushed it into over 360 kilometers west from Azerbaijan borders and invaded 20% of its territories into control of the 194 and 98 kilometers Azerbaijan-Iranian borders from Kurdistan in Fuul up to Dengilan. Armenians invaded 2 cities, 1 town and 53 villages populated by approximately 50,000 Azerbaijanis and the territory of Garabagh. Together with the invasions inside Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, Armenians captured 890 cities, villages and towns. The destroyed facilities, occupied planting and foresteries were as follows: 102 public buildings, 7,000, secondary schools, 693 public health facilities, 895 motor roads, 800 kilometers, bridge 160, water pipeline 2,300 kilometers, electric power lines 150,000 kilometers, forests 250,000, arable lands 200, historical monuments and museums 464. In accordance with national calculations, the Azerbaijan Republic suffered a loss approximating $60 billion. And the addition of the mercury, obsidian, and volcanic glass reserves of the Republic of Azerbaijan, with 60% of construction and upholstery materials, 23.8% of forests, and 7.8% of water reserves, etc., are in the invaded territories. 2 preserves and 3 sanctuaries, as well as 3 large water storage facilities, are also located in these regions. Armenian separatist terrorist invasive regime in Garabagh. Armenian separatist terrorist invasive regime in Garabagh. Armenians began the invasion of Garabagh by taking possession of political power in the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. For this purpose, they took measures aimed at the appropriation of the legal body's powers. Thus, they tried to put a so-called legal cover on their activities. For this purpose, they held a gathering called the Congress of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast Population Representatives. This Congress was illegal, as the regionals couldn't be objective, because representatives of the Oblast's Azerbaijani population were not invited to the Congress and didn't take part in it. The National Council was created on August 16, 1986. 1989. This council was directly heading the mission of breaking the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast from the Republic of Azerbaijan and impeded the legal activity of the Organization Committee. In September 1991, the creation of the fictitious Garabagh Republic was announced. The annulment of the status of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast of Azerbaijan and the introduction of an all-republic government style proves once again the illegality of that organization. During all these processes, the slyness of Armenia's position is striking as well. On the one hand, it was adopting a decision of the annexation of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast to Armenia. On the other hand, trying to make the international community admit the fictitious union named Garabagh Republic, hold elections in order to give a legitimate character to the governmental bodies in the Garabagh Republic. The Garabagh Republic is in essence a separatist, terrorist, invasive regime. This regime, like the other regimes similar to it, relies on military forces created with the help of Armenia as well as other states supporting and supplying with armed separatist terrorist forces. While this regime calls itself the Garabagh Republic, it actually keeps a big part of historical Garabagh land, that is, the territories not included in Garabagh. This fact alone expresses quite clearly the current state of the land aside the territory of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast. When the fictitious regime called the Garabagh Republic was created, Azerbaijan territories were invaded. Azerbaijanis suffered blood slaughters and genocide. The local population was forcibly driven out of their native lands and became refugees and internally displaced persons. Thus, ethnic cleansing, including deportation and killing, was conducted in these lands. As a result of this, the mono-ethnic power of the Armenians was established in the occupied territories of Azerbaijan. Prior to this, Armenians had implemented the same policy in the current Armenian territory, that's the former Western Azerbaijan lands. The region's economic state also reflects the measurable results of the bloody invasion regime. The economic potential of Garabagh has suffered a heavy blow. It was distributed among the Armenian mafia forces going as far back as during the Soviet power and became a raw material base of Armenia. The economy of other occupied Azerbaijan and adjacent regions of the Garabagh Autonomous Oblast has fallen into worse condition. The current economic potential and all forcibly displaced Azerbaijani people's property have been plundered and essentially destroyed. Non-cultivation of arable lands has shown its effect. Wild animals' pastos increase greatly, for there are plenty of wild plants in the unplanted and uncultivated lands. They cause great damage to agriculture, spreading into the surrounding territories as well as neighboring regions. Historical monuments belonging to Azerbaijanis in the occupied territory has been severely plundered and destroyed. Christian monuments belonging to the Azerbaijan Alban state are falsified and named Armenian Gregorian monuments. Modern Armenian vandalism is doing its work in front of the world community's eyes. The military operations conducted in Garabagh on the one hand, and the current invasion regime on Armenians have fully destroyed the Shusha cave, Shusha castle walls, tomb of the famous Azerbaijan poet Mullah Panah Vagi, Shah Abbas, Caravanserai in Fuul, cultural historical monuments in Kalbajar, Lachin, Gubadla, Zengilan and other settlements turned ancient Alban churches in Garabagh into weapons destroyers and destroyed them. About 43 meteorological observation points have been destroyed, which contradicts the principles of UNESCO and the worldwide meteorological organization. The report of the Azerbaijan delegation to the European Council Parliamentary Assembly provided detailed information about the fact that the Garabagh Republic uses the occupied territories for direct planting, production and trades. There are facts proving as well that international-aligned Armenian terrorist organization bases are located in these territories. The fact of financing the Garabagh separatist terrorist regime by international Armenian companies has been revealed as well. After the invasion of Garabagh, Armenia was given an incentive to settle the Armenians in those lands and began to use methods that were even more cunning. Due to the negotiations conducted with the Kurdish Workers' Party, they began to make measures for removing Kurds from Iraq to the invaded territories. In April 2003, on the event during the US-led war against Iraq, the idea emerged of placing in Garabagh Armenians living in Iraq. The United States Department expressed a serious protest against this. The change in the Kurds' position in Iraq broke the Armenian Kurdish Workers' Party's agreement regarding the movement of Kurds to Garabagh. This, in fact, was one more confirmation of the historical rights of Azerbaijan as the legal owners of those lands. The separatist, terrorist Armenian regime causes protests in the entire world as time goes on. Not accidentally, the Armenians, having great force and ways of influence in the international world, have not achieved any progress in the field of the recognition of this fictitious state despite all efforts. On the contrary, several authoritative international organizations have confirmed in their documents the fact of the invasion of Azerbaijan territory and called Armenia an invasive, aggressive state and fictitious Garabagh separatist terrorist regime. Unsettlement of the Armenia-Azerbaijan Garabagh conflict position of Azerbaijan Republic. Unsettlement of the Armenia-Azerbaijan Garabagh conflict position of Azerbaijan Republic. The realization of the Russian Empire's policy of creating an Armenian state in the territory of Azerbaijan began in the beginning of the 19th century. The history of ungrounded territorial claims of Armenia against Azerbaijan begins as well from the time the policy was implemented during the First World War. In 1918, the first Armenian state was created in Western Azerbaijan land and the South Caucasus. The Azerbaijan People's Republic conceded Yerevan city, one of the cultural centers of Azerbaijan, to the Armenians with a special order dated on May 20, 1980 for them to have a political center. This was a friendly step taken for the creation of peace and welfare in the South Caucasus. However, despite this, the Armenians continued impudently their territorial claims against Azerbaijan during the rule of the Azerbaijan People's Republic and the years of the Soviet power. Armenians receiving all kinds of support from Moscow during this period were constantly expanding the territory of the Armenian state by annexing Azerbaijan land. They achieved the clearance of Western Azerbaijan from Azerbaijan's local and absolute majority of the population from their ancestral lands through genocide and forced deportations, and thus made Armenia a mono-ethnic country. In the last period, 1988-1991, of the Soviet power, 1920-1991, these claims carried a military, political, and an openly aggressive character. This time, the Armenians took the purse of creating a second Armenian state in the South Caucasus, again in Azerbaijan territory. The Soviet state didn't provide a fair assessment of Armenia's territorial claims against Azerbaijan, the separatist terrorist activity of Armenians of Garabagh Autonomous Oblast, and they didn't reveal the criminal actions of Armenian separatists and terrorists. On the contrary, the decisions that were based on double standards, contradicting the problem's essence and not providing a fair settlement were adopted regarding this issue. The decisions of the Soviet Union Communist Party Central Committee and SSR Council of Ministers dated on March 24, 1988 of the SSR Supreme Soviet Presidium dated on July 20, etc. were just such decisions. Precisely because of these, the problems not solved within the USSR. Garabagh, as well as the events taking place around it, finally became one of the factors leading to the collapse of USSR. Thus, the settlement of that problem passed to the independent Azerbaijan state that inherited a heavy legacy of the Soviet state. However, at that time, a new geopolitical condition appeared in the world politics after the collapse of the USSR. Azerbaijan and Armenia began to become members of authoritative international organizations. Both republics were accepted to the membership of the Conference for Security Cooperation in Europe since January 30, 31 in 1992 and to UN on March 2. Because of this, the settlement of the problem of Garabagh, once a monopoly of the Soviet state, began to acquire an international character. On March 24, 1992, the extraordinary meeting of CSCE Council of Ministers created the Minsk group to monitor the conflict. Since March 1992, CSCE and UN have been operating together for the settlement of the problem. Armenian armed forces invaded Lachen and Shusha in May 1982, thus complicating the Cleanse group's activity. The same situation arose as well with the occupation of Kalbajor in March 1993. After this, the UN adopted Resolution 822. The Minsk group failed to take sufficient measure for the realization of that resolution. Consequently, Aghdari has also invaded. CSCE's role reduced even more, but UN adopted the 3 resolutions, one after another. The state of CSCE kept on until the Budapest summit. It should be noted that the negotiations concerning the settlement of the Armenian-Azerbaijan Garabagh conflict were conducted behind closed doors in accordance with international practice and the press suffice with brief information. Only some serious liquidations at a meeting of the Azerbaijani Republic Majlis dedicated to the discussion of the peaceful settlement process of Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Garabagh conflict dated on February 23, 2001 cleared the issue somewhat. He really said in a speech at the meeting of Azerbaijan Parliament that Asgar Minsk was created in 1992 and the United Nations Organization charged the OSCE with this issue. OSCE created the Minsk Group and the Minsk Conference. The Minsk Group includes 12 states. Finally, in 1994, we changed the situation at the OSCE Budapest Summit. By that mean, we made it fit little into the law. In December 1994, in the Budapest, the first determined issue of the chairmanship of the Minsk Group in the second decision was adopted there for the first time to create peaceful forces of OSCE, and if an agreement is reached, these peaceful forces of OSCE enter here to our region instead of in other countries. We intended that the peaceful forces will be representatives of different states not having an interest in this region. It was a very important decision that we could achieve this. Due to Heydar Aliyev's diplomatic resolve, significant progress was achieved, as well as the Lisbon summit held in December 1996. As noted in the February meeting of Milli Majlis in 2001, Azerbaijan's position was acknowledged and supported by 53 states of the world, with the exception of Armenia, during the Lisbon summit. The creation of the Minsk Group on a new format following the Lisbon summit brought a certain revival to its activity, though temporarily. This was reflected in the submission of suggestions for the settlement of the Armenia-Azerbaijan Dal-Garabagh conflict. The first document, titled All-Round Agreement on the Elimination of the Dal-Garabagh Conflict, was presented to the sides on June 11, 1997. That document is mostly known as a packet solution and consists of 2 agreements united in one packet. The first agreement is dedicated to the cessation of the armed conflict, the second to termination of the status of Dal-Garabagh. Since the Armenian side protested against the document, the second document, titled On Cessation of the Dal-Garabagh Armed Conflict, was suggested on September 19, 1997. This document intended a stage-by-stage settlement of the conflict. The stage-by-stage settlement plan was considered more admissible for Azerbaijan than the 2 other suggestions. Co-chairman of the Minsk Group, based on an objection by the Armenian side, made a change to stage-by-stage settlement plan on December 2 and tried to acknowledge Dal-Garabagh as a party to the conflict. In regard to this, Azerbaijan stated that it does not accept that version and the negotiations can be started based on the project dated on September 19 only. In November 1998, a third suggestion was put forward concerning the settlement of the conflict. This suggestion is known as common state. That suggestion was not accepted, for in essence, it was aimed at turning Dal-Garabagh into an independent state, and therefore it contradicted Azerbaijan's interests. After that, the co-chairman of the OSCE Minsk Group did not submit any suggestion. At the same time, since April 1999, direct dialogues of the presidents of both
republics for the settlement of the Armenian-Azerbaijan-Dal-Garabagh conflict began to be organized. Heydar Aliyev summed up the issue concerning the Minsk Group suggestions and direct dialogue, saying, "Of all these negotiations conducted and the suggestions made by the Minsk Group, it's clear to me that they want to solve the issue either by granting the Garabagh a status similar to independence or granting full independence." This vote appears from all the suggestions of the Minsk Group, nothing else. We had not agreed with this and cannot do this. At the position of the Azerbaijan president, it was expressed as follows. Azerbaijan president has taken a constructive position all the negotiations taking place so far and supported the peaceful settlement of the problem instead of any other ways. In addition, he stated that he agrees to provide Armenians of Garabagh with the highest status practiced and existing in the world by mutual concessions within the framework of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Azerbaijan. It should be noted that the settlement of the Garabagh problem is being allocated an extensive place in the scientific and socio-political view of Azerbaijan. Ilham Aliyev, who decisively won the presidential elections held in October 15 to 2003 and was elected as a new head of Azerbaijan Republic by the will of Azerbaijani people, started that he is going to continue the Aliyev's policy with pause in the settlement of the Dal-Garabagh conflict and all of the other fields. Said at the inauguration ceremony taking place in October 31, 2003, the Armenian-Azerbaijan-Dal-Garabagh conflict is the hardest problem for our country. We have been living in an armistice condition for many years. Unfortunately, the activity of the OSCE Minsk Group directly engaged on this issue does not yet yield any results. We still don't lose our hopes. We still hope that the co-chairman will deal with this issue in a more serious and responsible way. This issue must be settled. This problem can be solved only based on several principles in the international law standards. Azerbaijan territories must be released from invasion. 1 million refugees and internally displaced persons must return to their relative lands. Territorial integrity of our country must be restored. Azerbaijan will never reconcile with this situation with the invasion of our land. Everybody should know that we are supporters of peace, that we don't want war to break out again. We do want this issue to be solved peacefully. But despite this, our patience is not endless. Azerbaijan will release its own territories at whatever costs. After Ilham Aliyev began his activity as president, he began to consecutively realize all of the provisions of the program of his power, including the settlement of the Dal-Garabagh problem. In addition to the continuance of negotiations for Armenia, the activity in the field of work with international organizations were expanded even more. The Dal-Garabagh issue was put before the UN General Assembly. Ilham Aliyev's efficient activity that started at head of the Azerbaijani Parliament's delegation to the European Council successfully continues as well during his presidency. The speech of the Azerbaijan president on April 29, 2004 in Strasbourg was met with great interest and attention. All of this played an important role in that the European Council recognized Armenia as an invasive state and Dal-Garabagh as a separatist region in January 2005. On January 28, the beginning of activity of OSCE fact investigating mission aimed at studying the illegal settlement of Armenians in the occupied territory of Azerbaijan. Dal-Garabagh is also a significant success for Azerbaijan diplomacy. The Dal-Garabagh issue takes an important place as well in international relations and interstate contacts by the Azerbaijan Republic. Not accidentally, the USA has repeatedly stated that it acknowledges the territorial integrity of Azerbaijan. These and other irrefutable facts, which are the result of the Azerbaijan President Ilham Aliyev's intense activity as well as the successes achieved, prove that a serious change has taken place in the settlement of Armenia-Azerbaijan Dal-Garabagh conflict. Azerbaijan's position is supported even more in an international committee, and the day when occupied territories of Azerbaijan were released is close. Dal-Garabagh was an
integral part of Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has been recognized within its established borders. The territorial integrity of Azerbaijan is inviolable. In addition, the existence of one more Armenian state is possible. The ideas put forward by Armenia expressed ostensibly the population of Garabagh wants self-determination, whereas Armenians have already determined their destiny. They have an independent state, the Republic of Armenia. A second Armenian state cannot exist in the world, so the independence of Garabagh is inadmissible. Garabagh is the historical land of Azerbaijan, and it may have a higher degree of autonomy only. Ilham Aliyev.